So Tommy Robinson got out of prison 10 days ago. We wanted to do a podcast with him. He reached out, we spoke. Can't do it in the States. Last time he came here, he got arrested. So we're going to Bahamas to interview the controversial Tommy Robinson.
I have to be careful what I say here because I'll go straight back to jail. I'm currently under another gagging order. I just wish that someone would have come to my country 30 years ago or 40 years ago and said, here's what's going to happen.
People call you racist. People call you Islamophobic. Where is the passion coming for you to want to go up and do something about this?
And they're getting our young girls hooked on heroin and then they're prostituting them in paedophile gangs. The government know, the police know, religious leaders know. There's a conspiracy.
How is that possible?
Yeah, they control it. The drugs, the violence in every town and city is controlled by the Muslim community in the UK now. They are the mafia. And this is what Americans really need to get ready for.
But who is for you now?
Elon Musk spoke up on my behalf. Our entire prison system is controlled by Islamic jihadist gangs.
Yours.
Now yours will be soon as well. America needs to wake the hell up. Muslims beheaded.
In jail.
In jail. Took his head off. They stabbed him up, and then they held him on a yard, and then they used bed sheets. I don't think anyone understands what's happening. They're going to convert your youth. And when they convert your youth through the prison system or on the streets, they're going to turn them so quickly and so fast against America.
The UK is a very proud country. You guys were known as the power, the empire.
You need to come and look at what London looks like now. You need to come and look at our cities. They're gone. They're never coming back. This will be viewed as the darkest stain on British history.
30 seconds.
Did you ever think you would make it? I feel I'm supposed I could taste sweet victory. I know this life meant for me.
Adam, what's your point? The future looks bright.
My handshake is better than anything I ever signed. Right here.
You are a one-of-one?
My son's right about
I don't think I've ever said this before.
Tommy Robinson, how you doing, man?
I'm good, thank you.
It's good to finally do this, brother.
Nice to meet you.
And I know, yes, likewise as well, this is the first time we're meeting. And we looked at a lot of different locations to do it, but we're in Bahamas right now. So tell me why Bahamas? Why are we here?
Why here, not America?
Yes.
I was given an invite by 10 members of Congress to visit the United States to give a discussion on free speech in 2019. And when I went to the American Embassy in London, to sort out my visa, 45 British MPs had wrote to them to block my entry. 45. That is 4 times as many British MPs who had ever spoke about the national rape scandal that had happened in our country. So our politicians were more interested in preventing my speech in the United States, because giving a warning to the United States, than they were about tackling the rape scandal. But I'm here. I do have a criminal history, which we can get onto. I said I've been targeted with lawfare since I first opened my mouth back in 2009. I faced a huge onslaught. And I also travelled to the United States in 2010. So I travelled there in 2009 for the first time. I started my activism in 2009, where I formed an organisation which took to the streets in the UK. This is before the rise of social media. So we took to the streets in the UK because what I'd seen happening in my hometown and the problems I'd seen, which was the attack on free speech. When I was born in 1982, we had 1 mosque in Luton. We now have 45. White English are a minority. So I'd witnessed the problems that brings, and then I started an organisation to try and highlight the problems that no one was able to speak about and that the police weren't tackling, the government weren't tackling. And from that moment on, I faced, in the first 6 months, I had 3 police raids, and I went to travel to the United States, 2009. I was detained at JFK Airport, and I was told by the Americans who detained me that the British had told them not to let me in. So I was deported. But I went back the next year. And when I went back the next year, I illegally entered the United States.
Legally?
I went back on a friend's passport. And I knew what I was doing was wrong when I went there, but I gave a speech. I got in. I gave a speech at an event in New York, and my speech was called A Warning to America. So when I'd done it, I thought I may end up in trouble in the United States here, but I felt that passionately that America needs to understand the problems that we've faced. I just wish that someone would have come to my country 30 years ago or 40 years ago and said, here's what's going to happen, and gave a warning. So I went to America, I gave a speech, and then I flew home. I was detained 6 weeks later by the British police, and I spent 10 months in prison for that. And I only spent 2 days in America. I was detained. I spent 22 weeks on solitary confinement.
For the speech?
For illegally entering America, because I booked 2 flights.
But isn't that a crime for the US, not for the UK?
The US were not interested. I read all the documentation. They didn't care. But what the UK done is remanded me in prison. So from when they arrested me, they put me straight in prison and I wasn't allowed bail. They said I was a flight risk because of the passport incident. So then by the time I got to court, which was 3.5 months later, they said, if you plead not guilty, you're going to sit here for another 6 months to 9 months, waiting trial. If you plead guilty, you've got a chance of getting out. So I pled guilty and they let me out 8 weeks later.
8 weeks later. So it's interesting you're saying this because for me, when I talk to friends or guys about Tommy Robinson, it's a very interesting reaction that we get. In the morning, we're sitting here, literally an hour and a half prior to this. Me and Rob are out there kind of going through, finalizing the notes. And I see this fellow with his wife to our left. He keeps going like this to me. He keeps looking at me. And you can tell he's Middle Eastern, maybe Indian, but I don't know yet. But he's paying attention to what we're talking about. We're watching videos and we're going through a couple things. Then he comes back and he says, hey, I heard you're talking about UK and, what's going on there and Muslims and Sikhs and all this other stuff. I say, yeah, so what do you think about what's going on there? Well, let me tell you what's going on. So what do you think about Tommy Robinson? I says, ooh, Tommy Robinson. I says, yeah, what do you think about it? He says, well, you have to know that. I said, you're at a nice resort. I'm assuming you make money, you're successful. He said, I'm from education. He says, Tommy Robinson, man, he's been arrested. He's been in trouble. He's done this. He's done that. But a lot of my friends who couldn't stand him 20 years ago are now siding with him. I said, really? He says, a lot of people are agreeing with him now. I said, why are they agreeing with him? He says, well, I used to live in London. Now I'm out. I saw what was going on in Sheffield. Is it Sheffield? What did he call the Schofield or Sheffield, one of the cities?
There is a city called Sheffield.
Then that's where he's from. He says, Sheffield, he says, when I lived there, it was something else 20 years ago versus what it is today. So we know when we watch you, what you're against. People call you racist. People call you Islamophobic. I said, what would you ask him? He says, ask him if he's racist or not. I said, he's been asked that many times, right? So I'd like to know, for a lot of people that maybe don't know your story. I've watched the documentary. I've seen your content over the years. I've seen you back and forth with peers from 10 years ago to now to all the stuff you got going on. I see your feud with you and Dan Bilzerian online and there's a lot of different things that's going on. What are you against? What are you for?
I'm for Britain. I love my country. I want my children to grow up in a safe and prosperous Britain. And there is no one, like the gentleman you spoke to, if you ask them, is the country going in the right direction? There will be no one that will say yes. And like the saying, we live in a free country. You won't hear anyone say that in Britain anymore. So those people, like the gentleman you spoke to, all I'm guilty of is being a decade ahead. I was so far ahead of everyone else who now sees the problems. And the reason I was so far ahead is, as I said, I was born in Luton Town. I've watched the change. I've seen it firsthand. And when I grew up, you have to understand, Luton is a multicultural town. And if you line up my friends and you took 20 of us, we're all sons of immigrants. My mother was an Irish immigrant. My friends are St. Lucian, Bulgarian, Italian, Jamaican. We're all sons of immigrants. But growing up in that town gives me, so many other communities get blamed for the problem of immigration that we're seeing in the UK. And I take a lot of flack from this from all sides. So David Cameron come out and said multiculturalism's failed when he was the Prime Minister of Great Britain. Angela Merkel said multiculturalism's failed. For me, I think that's weak and it's cowardice because Islam has failed. The Sikhs haven't failed. The Jews haven't failed. The Hindus haven't failed. In fact, no other communities have failed to integrate and assimilate into Great Britain. It's worked. And my hometown, and I can only speak by experience, is a perfect example of that. So any journalists who come to Luton, which is where the English Defence League started, and it was born out of frustration, Luton, by the CEA, was named as the epicentre for terrorist atrocities in Europe. That's Luton. The head office of al-Mujahideen, Omar Bakri, Abu Hamza, some of the country's most feared radical jihadists, their head office was in my town. So to some people, this is a faraway story. When people go to fight for ISIS or they commit terrorist atrocities, it's just something you read in the news. I went to school with them. I grew up with them men. I've got friends who I grew up with who converted to Islam in jail, who are now part of those groups, who have done jail for becoming ISIS terrorists. So I've experienced all of that. And growing up in Luton, when we went to school, there was the Muslim playground and the non-Muslim playground. We didn't create that. There was just there's total no assimilation. And I challenge every journalist that comes with me. I challenge anyone. And the American journalists who have come, I've had them come from the New Yorker, all different magazines. I said, right, I'll meet you in Luton. I said, now I'll give you a challenge. You go out in that town and find me Muslims with a non-Muslim. Just find me one that aren't selling drugs. Find me a group of Muslims that have non-Muslim friends in amongst them. You just won't do it. You will not find it. Every group of white children are with black children. Every group of black children are with white children. And I'll bring it back to even our school dinner tables. when you go into our school dinner halls, everyone's sitting intermixed, whites, blacks, Indians, Chinese, because we're very diverse. And in the corner, there's 8, 10 tables of Muslims. So I watched that growing up. I experienced the hostility, the difference growing up in a town like that. So when people say multiculturalism's failed, I say Islam's failed. And you're too weak to admit that. So when we had the rape gang scandal, which to any American viewers to understand how big of a problem this was, in 2004, I was 20 and I organised my first ever demonstration. I called it Ban the Luton Taliban. And I made leaflets. And I actually presented these leaflets because people think I've changed.
This is at 20 years old.
This is 20 years old. Now, I left school. I'd done well at school. Luton's the roughest town in the UK. It has the most poverty. It's a rough and violent town.
Were you ever part of a gang growing up or no?
No, not part of any gang. Many of my friends, just because of where I grew up, are involved in criminality.
Tough guys.
Tough, yeah.
At 16 years old, what were you doing?
At 16 years old, I left school and I'd done an aeronautical engineering apprenticeship with Britannia Airways. So I studied for 4 years to fix airplanes, to become an engineer.
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah. So I did that. I done well. I didn't try at school, but I naturally done well. I got an A in maths. I got 5 Bs, 5 Cs in GCSEs, but I never tried.
Were you always in trouble in high school or no?
Trouble as in, I was a jack the lad.
Were you arrested? Would you?
No, never arrested. No, never arrested. Nothing like that, no.
Fights, altercations?
There was fights and altercations. What I thought was normal growing up, I realised wasn't normal. It was just seemed normal to us in Luton. Luton's a very violent town, and problems were dealt with violence, whether it be one school against another. There was a lot of problems.
When you say violent town, like who came from Luton? Names that we would know. Is it like, is there history?
Andrew Tate's from Luton.
He's from Luton as well? Oh, really interesting. Because, initially, he's the one that told me, put me in contact with you originally when we were talking. So you're coming up in a place like that, but at 20 years old, which is 21 years ago, where is the passion coming for you to want to go up and do something about this?
20 years old, I had a cousin who was sexually groomed. We call them grooming gangs. They're rape gangs. So I had a cousin who was taken by the Pakistani community. She was raped continuously. She woke up one time in a flat and there's loads of bearded men all raping her. She run naked through the streets. It was the prostitute. She was only a child. And there was a prostitute that then rang her dad. Her dad's gone to get her. But she kept escaping the house to get back to the gangs.
How old was she at the time?
She would have been 13.
They're doing this to her at 13 years old?
They do it younger than 13.
And this is your first cousin?
This is our cousin, yeah.
First cousin?
No, my cousin's cousin.
So like a second cousin?
Second cousin, yeah.
And somebody that you interact with, you know this girl?
No, yeah, and I remember listening as a child to all the family meetings about it. So the family would all be having meetings, but this may sound unbelievable to people. The police wouldn't do anything. They just called her a drug addict. Not a child, not a victim, a drug addict.
Was she one? Was she?
Yeah, because what they do is, the process is, they get a young girl and they groom them. And the grooming period is they give them trainers, they give them phones, they give them alcohol, cigarettes, and they're nice to them at first. And then they get their confidence and they separate them from their family. They say, your mum and dad don't trust you. They treat you like a little child. And there's a process that these children go through. And then they get them into sexual relationships with one man at first. And then that man will manipulate the girl, and before they know it, there's 10 men on them. And then literally, there's stories which people would find amazing, that in some of the houses, the girls are in the houses, and there's men queuing at the doors to go in one by one to rape them and rape them and rape them. And people, so I'd seen this. And in 2000, as I said, I was successful. I was doing all right for a young man. And it was the Beslem Massacre. And the Beslem School Massacre. To anyone who doesn't watch that, you should watch it. I was young, and I remember watching it, and I was 19, 20, I think, at the time. And I saw that in Russia, the Chechens had gone into a school, and the jihadists had took over the school, and all the parents are outside the school. So imagine this, your kids are in school, and you hear there's terrorists have took control of the school. So the parents are outside the school, and I remember watching the mums drop on their knees, and the parents as they started massacring the children inside the school. So all their kids are getting murdered. And I remember watching it thinking, well, that's not one person doing it. There was a whole group of men that done it. And then just a month later, I'm watching Muslims in Luton get interviewed in a chicken shop in Luton. And they're saying that this was a justified attack and it would be justified in a English school. And from that moment on, that was my moment. Because I remember I watched this man say it. His name was Saif al-Islam, which is Sword of Islam. And I watched him say it and I thought, who is he? And by this time, I was involved in, the football scene in the UK. We have many would look at it as a football hooligan scene, where lots of young men go to football together and certain clubs would have rivalries with each other. I was involved in the football scene. I remember looking at this group, and that was my awakening. I looked at the group and I saw Al Majradin, the man that was talking. And then the more I looked at them, I saw Omar Bakri, Abu Hamza. I saw all of them were part of this group. 60% of the terrorists in UK jails are part of this group. And then when I looked at them, I saw the head office was on Biscuit Road. So I started looking at what they were saying and on their website. And then they had a pace table set up in our town centre. We have a bakery called Don Miller's. And I went down to the pace table and watched what they were doing. I thought that they were literally recruiting to send people to fight against our armed forces at the time, Afghanistan and Iraq. And they were openly doing it, celebrating it, sending so many Muslims out there to be radicalised, to fight in jihad. And I'm thinking, how are they doing this in our town centre? How are they
How old are you at the time? You're 20 at the time?
Yeah, I was 20 at the time. So then I made leaflets. And remember, we'd seen our daughters, our cousins, our relatives, so many girls at school. When I went to school, I knew so many girls that were being raped and prostituted. But at the time, as children, we just saw them as being with all the older Pakistani men. So a lot of the kids would view the girls as slags. We were looking at the girls thinking they're all with all the older Pakistanis. As children, we weren't viewing them as victims. It's only as you grow up that you realise they're kids and they were being taken by men and raped. So I'd watched all these things going on. I'd seen a lot of it. So then when I saw them outside the town, when I saw them doing these protests, I wrote leaflets and I called it Ban the Luton Taliban. And I went to all the lads that went to football and said, we've got to do something about these terrorists. They're in our town centre every Saturday. And the more I'd looked into them, the more then I started looking at Islam and understanding why these people think the way they do, what's their ideology. And I'll be honest, it terrified me. It terrified me that there was such a large group operating day in, day out that weren't being challenged. So I wrote these leaflets. And in the leaflets, I said, whites and blacks are being religiously and racially targeted. And I say this because we have, if you're black or you're white, and there were drug dealers or criminals within communities, which are in every community, the police would crush them. But the Islamic community, they're driving around in Lamborghinis and Ferraris. We know which shops they're using to front heroin. And I said in this leaflet that they're using heroin as a weapon against our communities, and they're getting our young girls hooked on heroin, and then they're prostituting them in paedophile gangs. And this was in 2000, so no one knew about this. And this leaflet went on the front page of my newspaper, local newspaper. And in it, I said that we don't have a problem with your average Muslim, but there's a problem what's going on here, and someone needs to tackle it. Now, the response I got from that, I faced full backlash from every single Pakistani Muslim gang, because our town is all 50% Pakistani. They wanted to target me. They wanted to attack me. My mum's house got smashed up. And in that leaflet, I named a gang. They're called the Gambino Gang in Luton. Very original for Pakistanis, call themselves the Gambino Gang. But they deal with all the prostitution, the drugs. And that was in 2000. Now, fast forward to 2007, our national newspapers started running articles about how the Gambino Gang are linked with the jihadist groups and how they're funding all the terrorism. But I've done this in 2000. And I faced a massive onslaught for it. I faced violence, I faced attacks. But growing up at that time, as our football group, there was quite a few of English lads as well. And it was a bit of a battle over us not wanting to back down to the takeover of the town. Fast forward then we get to 2009, and the soldiers are doing a homecoming parade. But by the time we get to 2009, this happened in 2004. Over those 5 years, I've gone on to set up a plumbing business. I had a solarium shop. I had 7 properties. So I'm doing well, and my passion is making money. So my passion is making money. And like most people, I could have turned a blind eye to what was happening. 2009, our soldiers are given the freedom to walk through the town on a homecoming parade. This same group, Al Majradin, I turned up on a Tuesday morning in the town centre. And when I turned up, I see so many police. And it was for the parade. I see police everywhere. What's going on? And I see about 30 or 40 women all with the niqab together, which is quite a sight anyway. And then as I looked, I started spotting the jihadists, Saif al-Islam, Roger Ibrahim, all their main extremists. And I realised they're going to attack the troops. That's what's going to happen here. But then I watched as the police took these jihadists, they are ISIS, and through my town hall. So my town hall is in the town centre. They opened up the doors. They took all the jihadists through the town hall. And I'm thinking, what's going on? And then I just heard all the commotion. And as the soldiers had marched down the back of the road, they brought all the jihadists out next to them. And then the jihadists were screaming at them, baby killers, butchers of Basra. They spat in some of the soldiers' mums' faces. And that was the catalyst that then gave birth to the organisation we formed. I watched it that day, and after this, I sat down with my cousin at the time and some of the other lads and said, they can't get away with this. Like, what's happening in our town? It cannot be. And Luton, every time Luton, just Google Luton and terrorism, yeah? 5 men found guilty after abusive chants. That's them. But you see Beaky, the one on the left, he went to my school. This is the
The one with the beard?
Yeah, he went to my school. See, the difference is many people...
Who is the guy on the left? Who's the one in the middle? Who's the one on the right?
They're so there's a group in they're part of this extremist jihadist group. All of them now have gone for terrorism. 4 of them are dead. They went to fight for ISIS. But at the time, you have to understand that they were not a prescribed group. They ended up becoming a prescribed terrorist organisation, but only because we took them on. They were allowed. You know the scenes of Abu Hamza with the hook in Finsbury Park, where hundreds of Muslims in the streets, and he's calling for war and calling for jihad. No one was stopping them.
Mohammed Hijab?
No, not Mohammed Hijab. Abu Hamza with the hook. He's a terrorist with a hook. But back when this was going on, so this is going on in Luton, I watched that day and then said, we've got to do something. And if you Google Luton, every time my town, I'm quite tribal. I think many Brits are. I'm quite tribal about my town, about my school, about my football club. And every time you heard Luton town mentioned, it was to do with terrorists. And this incident, but this went worldwide. And every time our town, and I love our town, I love my town, it's part of who I am. And every time it's mentioned, it's to do with extremism and jihadists and terrorist plots. 7/7 plot, they collected their bombs in Luton. Fertiliser bomb plot, Luton. Stockholm bomber, Luton. Like so many of the world's planned jihadist attacks have been born out of my town. And that happened because no one confronted them. The security services didn't tackle them. We then formed an organisation, and our purpose was to confront these gangs. And then it forced the government to prescribe them as terrorist groups. But they hadn't been prescribed. What they'd been given as jihadists is a free rein for 20 to 30 years to radicalise and recruit in our towns and cities across the country. I thought it was a local Luton issue. Remember, I hadn't really left Luton. I was 20 years old. By the time this happened, I was 25. So we started an organisation to challenge what they were doing, highlight what they were doing, which gave birth to the English Defence League, which spread across the country. I went from working on a building site to 6 months later being the leader of the biggest street protest movement Europe had seen.
This is the EDL.
This is the EDL. And we travelled the country and we took to the streets and it went like that. To explain it went like that. We went from this incident against our soldiers and they attacked them. So then I organised a protest in response to it to show that the people of Luton support our armed forces. And when we turned up that day, the police kettled us and I bought a cameraman just because I knew what they'd do. So I watched that day as the terrorists were taken through the town hall. And when people got angry, the police drew their batons on the English. They didn't even look at the Muslims. They weren't searched. Nothing happened. They were just allowed to spew their hate. We organised something in response to that. And when we turned up, I bought a cameraman. He was a wedding photographer, a wedding cameraman. It was £450. I said, I just want you to film everything. And then when we turned up in the town centre, they put us against the walls, cameras in our faces, what's your name, take your shoes off, put their hands, searched us. And as they're doing it, I said, you didn't do this to them. You didn't search them. When they attacked our armed forces, you didn't search them. You didn't take their names. You didn't abuse them the way you're abusing us right now. And then when we went to try and get to the war memorial, our big thing was this happened at our war memorial for our armed forces. In that regiment, Scott Muntridge had died. He's from our estate. Another boy who was 19 lost his legs. We went to pay our respects and they were attacked. So it was I said, you could have lit a match and our town would have blown up. That's the feeling in the town, how angry and frustrated we were. So as we turned up to show our support for our armed forces, which was a march, it was a bank holiday Sunday, the bank holiday weekend, the police stopped us from getting to the war memorial. They come on horses. And we made it very clear, Luton is a diverse town. When you try and talk about these issues, anything nationalist, anything waving the St. George's flag or the Union flag, it attracts, I always said it attracts the brave and it also attracts some idiots. Now, so National Front are a neo-Nazi sort of organisation, but we thought the groups like this may try and turn up. So we made it clear from the start, National Front not welcome. In our banners, in our first banners, we said, Nigerian Christians, we stand with you. Because the more I was learning, I looked and that year, 5 Christian churches had been blown up on Christmas Day in Nigeria. didn't even make our news. So I was looking at this jihad that was going on around the world, and I was going down a rabbit hole and understanding what it was and looking at all these things. Thought, right, we'll go and show our support for our armed forces. And as we turn up to show our support for our armed forces, the police kettled us. And for 3 hours, they held our community. My auntie was there. She had to urinate in the street. My friend, who's a little mixed race boy, the police come past on a horse and hit him in the face with a Trojan, knocked his teeth out. And from that day then, it was like, we can't even protest about it. Like, you didn't stop them. And do you know what?
Why though? Why didn't they stop them?
They have never said no to the Islamic community.
Why though?
They're scared of them.
Why?
So there was Bradford, the riots in Bradford, I think, which were in 2001. There was mass riots in Bradford where the Pakistani community come out and burned Bradford. But when they burned Bradford, they burned Oldham, so the riots spread. And I learned a lot of this by then talking to the police as well. There was, from the point of these riots, they basically just got appeased for everything and anything. So that's fearful. And what the Islamic community do?
Second largest Bible religion in South Asia of UK city with approximately 68,000 Pakistanis, 12,500 Indians, 5,000 Bangladesh, 3,000 Asians, having a majority of people in the city, ethnicity 78.3% white, 19.1% South Asian. So
now that's changed. That's at least 50, 60% Muslim.
The city.
Yeah. But from when they've done this, the riot spread to 5, 6, 7, 8 cities. Now, the Islamic community continually hold this, and our government, our politicians, all of them are so scared of them.
Why?
Because of the violence. Because
You have to, so from the outside, we're watching it, right? So
Yep.
I like numbers. So I go up there and I said, okay, so I'm born and raised in Iran. So I lived in Iran for 11 years. I know what it's like to eliminate Muslim nation, what it's like, the tensions, the way they treat others. So I said, okay, let me find out what you were born in 84? Were you 80?
I was born in 82.
82, okay. So Muslim population in EU from 84 till today, EU total, 84, 6 million, 2004, 13 million, 2025, 25 million. So they went 6 million, 13 million, 25 million today. They're doubling every 20 years. They'll be at 50 million in 2044, and then 100 million in 2064. So let's go to US. US 84, 1.2 million, 2004, 2.35 million, 2020, 24, today, 4.5 million. We're doubling every 20 years. We're at 4.5 million. Let's go to Canada. Canada, 84, 150,000. Then they went to 600,000. Then they went to 1.8 million. They're 3xing every 20 years. So Canada's competing as well. But why are so many people afraid of them? I keep asking this question. The UK is a very proud country, at one point financial capital of the world. Everything flowed through you. You guys were known as the power, the empire. Why are they so afraid of this community that's completely destroying their identity?
It's a mixture of things. It's a mixture of fear, but it also illustrates the power of political correctness. The power, and this is what Americans really need to get ready for. Because I see a lot of frustration coming out of America to do with immigration over the years for Hispanic immigration. And I'm sitting thinking, you've got no idea. Your borders have just been opened by Biden. It's changed. You know, you had Mexican immigration for so many years. I wish we had Mexican immigration. Yeah? When the Polish come to the UK and people are moaning, I think, what are you moaning about? Well, because I'm from Luton. Yeah? But they're hardworking. They're Catholic. They're family orientated. There'll be some teething problems like there were because my mum come from Ireland, but they will be proud in the end of their country and they will assimilate and integrate. But you have just allowed open border mass immigration to 8 million, 10 million, however many have come through your borders. And the numbers is the biggest problem. And you've now had Syrians, Somalians, Pakistanis, Afghanis, and all you have to do is just basics. Just look at the way they think in those countries, and don't take Tommy Robinson's opinion. Look at Pew Research, any of the top research things. 99% of Afghanis want Sharia law. Their views on homosexuality, their views on free speech, their views on all the things are alien to ours. And the problem is, once they come in and come such a powerful vote bank, like the numbers you just went through. I looked at numbers from Manchester. So in Manchester, we had the terrorist attack at the Ariana Grande concert. When I looked at those numbers, they had 25,000 Muslims. 10 years later, 50,000. 10 years later, 100,000. So you said they're doubling every 20 years, right? In Manchester, every 10 years. Yeah. Now, 100,000, if that becomes 200,000, and 10 years later it becomes 400,000, there's only 500,000 people live in that city. Now, 50% of the British public don't vote. 50% do not vote. They're disillusioned. That's us, the working class. We're fed up. Most people say they're not rich enough or poor enough for it to make a difference. But the Islamic community and I can only talk from experience of Luton again, yeah? At the time, when I last looked at it, 2011, we had 19 mosques at that time. Now, the leader of the mosques have one leader. They come together as the Council of Mosques. That leader sits down with the Labour Party, your Democrat Party. They sit down and they do a deal for the vote. And they do agreements and they give them concessions and they agree things. And then from that one meeting, they get 40,000 votes. Now, when we were challenging, when we had Luton, we were challenging the council, we were challenging everything that's happening. And my leader of my council, her name was Hazel Simmons, she just looked at us when I went to meet and she said, there's not enough for you. Sit back. Well, we don't care. There's not enough for you. And that vote bank becomes so powerful. And the appeasement and the numbers as we talk about how big is the problem. If you look now, you've seen this whole thing blow up recently, first week of January, which was about the rape gang scandal. Yeah, I've done a 5-part series. As I said, we formed this organisation in Luton, the English Defence League. We challenged this extremist terrorist group. We followed them. That was our tactics, was to follow them, confront them, highlight them. When I started doing that, I visited towns and cities across the UK, and I had families crying. I mean, like some of the experiences I've had to meet one father in Blackpool. They took his daughter. I mean, literally, people's daughters are being taken across the country. And the police, this may sound so insane to an American audience, the police are allowing it, facilitating it, accommodating it. The government know, the police know, religious leaders know. There's a conspiracy.
How is that possible, though? Because when you say that to the average person, they say, okay, what is the incentive?
Yep.
Is it a money play? Is it blackmail? No. Is there do they need to vote? It's not like they're voting. Are they good for the economy? A Pew Research 2021 report says that 41% of Muslims ages 16 to 64 are economically inactive, compared to 24.7% of overall population. Inactive. They don't work. They don't contribute to society. They're out. 59% does. So, but there has to be something where one says that's why they allow them to do whatever they want to do and they can get away with everything. What is the motivation? How are they winning?
Well, we can only go off what the research is. So when I first come out in 2009 with the English Defence League, I sat on a show called Jeremy Paxman, Jeremy Paxman was the most fierce presenter for Newsnight, the biggest political debate show. And I remember when I went on there, and everyone was excited who are the English Defence League oppositions, because they said he's going to crucify me, he's going to finish me, because they viewed me as uneducated because of the way I speak and the way I talk and my background. America don't understand the class system that goes on in the UK. The working class was supposed to just shut up, basically, yeah? And we're not allowed to have an opinion. And I remember going on there with Jeremy Paxman, and I sat there, and I tried to explain to him that our daughters are being picked up outside schools by large groups of Pakistani men, kidnapped, and none of these videos have aged well for them. And he sat there and said, you expect us to believe, like many people might be thinking now, you expect us to believe that this is being allowed to happen. So let's fast forward to 2015. For 5 years, I've gone around the country. I was on about the father in Blackpool. I can give you hundreds of these examples. The father in Blackpool, they take his daughter. When they take his daughter, the father and the son, Muslim father and son, they're both raping her. They ring him. So the father is getting a phone call. It's his daughter being raped. He has to listen to his daughter being raped. He rang me this is 2010 I first met him. I think it was about 2015. I'll get emotional thinking about it. I think it was about 2015 he rang me up. She's back. She's back, Tommy. I've got her back. 2 kids later. So this is going on across our whole country, yeah. And when that's going on, we're fear-mongering. Remember, we come under immense attack. And Rotherham, you've heard of Rotherham? So Rotherham is the scapegoat city for these gangs. It's where they allowed the story to come out. And it didn't come out until 2014-15. I was sat in prison. And breaking news, what happened is a journalist called Andrew Norfolk. And the reasons he gave was he had known for years, this is his words, not mine. He had known for years that these gangs were operating, but he was too scared because they were all Pakistani men and all the victims were young English girls. And he says it was the far right dream. So why are you even thinking about politics or anything, yeah? He said it was the far right dream. So he was too scared to report on it. Then saw the emergence of the English Defence League. Now, we were very vocal. We've become a household name, not just in the UK, but across the globe within 12 to 24 months. And what that organisation was young, determined English men who weren't going to back down. And we travelled the country. And remember, I know it was never going to be female nurses or doctors that stood up against these gangs on the streets. Because when you stand up against them, violence, threats, intimidation, police raids. So the organisation forms. Across the country, there's been a conspiracy of silence in every town and city. So many high-ranking people now have dirty hands who have hid this crime. We're on the streets. We made it impossible. 5,000 men charging through the streets with signs that our daughters are not halal meat. If you listen to the videos, I give a presentation in Russia. I had to go to Russia because my free speech was taken in the UK. I gave a presentation called The Rape of Britain where I went back and I showed English Defence League forms here. If you want to see a graph of the arrests for these Islamic rape gangs, the graph just goes straight like this. English Defence League forms in 2009, 2010, 2011, boom, through the roof. They could no longer hide it because the world's media were coming to our demonstrations. Our speeches about they're raping our daughters, they're taking our kids. Then Muslim pedos off our streets you've got five. Whereas people had been whispering about Islam, it's too scared to talk about it. Overnight, you had 5,000, 10,000 men screaming about it, and it was a catalyst across the country. And I then realised what I've seen in Luton. Luton's just a blueprint for every town and city. And I realised, geez, this is coordinated. It's happening across the whole country. I'm sitting down with families and they're crying their eyes out. His daughter's been missing for 3-4 days. And they're going to the police and not getting any help. And all this was unbelievable. And fast forward to 2014, 2015, this big study come in the city of Rotherham. Rotherham has a 3.7% Muslim population. 1,400 children they found that had been raped. There'd been murders. But in that city, the investigation found the police knew it was happening. They were too scared to tackle it through fear of being branded racist. So say that out loud. This is where you need to understand as the United States of America that the Democrats, because remember, many of these Islamic immigration will end up in Democrat cities. They will then become that powerful as a vote bank. And that's what happened in many cities across the UK. That the political party care more about the votes and power than they do they'll sacrifice the kids. And that sounds insane. But when you look at the numbers, so Rotherham, 3.7% Muslim population, 1,400 children had been raped in that town. When that come out, and the study come out, some of the examples, Patrick, two dads get together. Their 13-year-old daughters are in a house, 10 Pakistani Muslim men raping them. The dads turn up at the house to get the kids back. And remember, this is not me. Read the report. This is not me saying it. The two dads go to get their daughters back. The police turn up and arrest the dads. They leave the girls in there. Another example, an 11-year-old girl's in a derelict house, an abandoned house. 5 Muslim men are sexually assaulting and raping her. The police turn up. They arrest the little girl for being drunk and disorderly.
I saw that one.
They literally allowed this to happen.
How though?
How
How are they so scared when you start doing this to kids? Who is not at the top? A prime minister, the royal family, the most powerful people. Who is not sitting there saying we can't tolerate this?
No, not just can't tolerate it. They celebrated everyone who covered it up. Not just, and that goes to the rule. So when all this blew up, 2015, people are realizing, oh my God, everything we were saying was right. So remember, we were attacked.
Can you do me a favor? Can you play the clip of Tommy with Jeremy Paxman? Is this you? This is a 1 minute clip. Yeah. Play this clip. Go. And this is how long ago? 15 years ago?
15 years ago.
15 years ago. Go for it.
His head. I mean, do you understand that people are frightened by that kind of thing, and they're frightened by the possibility of this demonstration?
We're frightened by We're frightened by Shawalo. The leader of the Luton Council Mosque, the leader of the Luton Council,
she's worried by what you set off.
The leader of the Luton Council Mosque, who is in charge of 19 mosques in our town, called for Sharia law for the Islamic community in our town. That frightens me. That frightens me.
And you're not frightened by what the prospect of a lot of young men swaggering around a town, chanting about doing Chinese and the rest of it.
Genuine causes. We've got genuine grievances. Ours is a righteous cause. We
All right.
It is. So
Okay.
we are, but I am worried.
Right.
I am worried, and many people across towns are
Right. A lot of people are worried. I believe you.
Right. Most of the newspapers tomorrow morning go with the news
Isn't
from
part of that,
Egypt, not
part of
surprisingly.
that in this interview where we just talk about the rape gangs, where and he looks at me like I'm an idiot.
Who's he known in your country? How big is he?
He was
at
the
the
biggest.
time. He was the biggest.
He was the biggest.
So he was like the Anderson Cooper of CNN at that time.
He was and do you know what I said to him? I said to him in there, I said, Jeremy, let me ask you, do you know anyone who's been raped by a Pakistani Muslim gang? Do you know anyone who's been murdered by a Pakistani Muslim gang? Do you know any girls who have been taken and now converted and not allowed to speak to their family at the hands of a Muslim gang? Do you know anyone hooked on heroin sold to them by a Muslim gang? I said, you don't know anyone, do you? We do. So when these girls are getting raped, whose daughters do you think they are? They're ours in towns like Luton. I said, so I expect you to understand, but I do expect you to listen. I do expect you to listen, because that's what's happening in every town and city. And you see, if they would have listened then. I also give a presentation at Oxford University. And when I was doing this, remember, I was just getting deemed as racist, extremist, far right. That was all the accusations.
You're 26 years old here.
Yeah, I was young. I was young and I was in the deep end, to be honest. And remember, when I was never political, I didn't care about politics. And the problem is most working class don't, okay? Most people don't care about politics. We're not political. The Islamic ideology is very political. We're not involved in politics. But I didn't care about it. But then once I saw what was happening and I realised it across the country, we started giving a voice to it. And you know, when I started this in 2009, this is Yorkshire Police. So the main area for these gangs was in Yorkshire. I go to the airport. I'm at Luton Airport. I get arrested by Special Branch. Okay. As they arrest me, they say, for a criminal damage. So I get taken to the police station. As I'm in the police station, they say, we're now raiding properties linked to you. I said, what? They went into my mum's with machine guns. They went into where my babies were, my wife, with machine guns. They ransacked the houses. And then when it comes to bailing me, what I find out is, you see, on a hotel room door, there's the little bit of metal that connects the door.
Mm-hmm.
They arrested me for £30, $40, criminal damage on a door that they said I stayed in Sheffield, actually, yeah? And I did stay in that hotel, and they know I stayed in that hotel because after we'd done a demonstration in Blackpool, we'd been in Blackpool, and there was a young girl who had been kidnapped, and they chopped her up in kebab meat. Yeah? Google this case, Google Charlene Downs. She was kidnapped. The police put listening devices in the Muslim. The police put listening devices in the Muslim takeaway. When the mother went to ask where her daughter was, because she always hung around this Muslim takeaway, they gave her a free kebab. Yeah. What we then find out from the listening, yeah, that's her. I've met her mum. What we then find out from the listening devices is the Muslims are saying her bones went in as well. They're talking about it on the recording devices, but it was illegal. The way the police done it, it was illegal. So the Muslims get off. They just changed the name of their takeaway. They're still running the same takeaway. She's dead. But these sort of things weren't making national news. These sort of things are going on across the whole country. But it had been silenced. Everyone was so scared. So fast forward, the report come out. When the report come out in Rotherham, and again, you're asking the important questions. Why? Why did no one do anything? And I ask these questions. But for asking these questions, that's why they want to shut you down. So why did no one do anything? And it wasn't just Rotherham. Then we had reports come out of Telford. We then had reports come out of Manchester. So then before you know it, there's 55 cities where there's been convictions of these men. And so people understand the scale of the problem. Pakistani men make up about 2 or 3% of the UK population. They're responsible for 90% of the convictions of these rape gangs. Pakistani men, Muslim men. 90% of the convictions. 30% of the men convicted in these crimes' names are Mohammed. Why? How come it's not the Sikhs? The Jews aren't doing it. The Hindus aren't doing it. No one else is doing it. In fact, they're not doing it, but they're also victims of these gangs. Now, I don't want for 1 minute anyone to think I'm saying every Muslim's involved in this. I grew up in Luton Town. Some of the best people I met growing up are Muslim lads, yeah? That doesn't deter from this massive problem we've got. Why do they think this way? Why is it facilitated? Why is it being hidden within the community? And why will no one tackle it? But when I started first talking in 2009, this is to understand remember, police forces have allowed it to happen. So if you're the head of the police in Rotherham, who's now in charge of counter-terrorism, the head officer who was in charge of Rotherham at the time of this rape gang scandal, who knew it was happening, yeah, Yorkshire Police, I'm in Luton, that's a 3 or 4 hour drive. Who arrested me at the airport when I was arrested by Special Branch for this hotel? 30 officers from Yorkshire come down. When they bailed me, they give me conditions, which I'm still getting now. My bail conditions, remember, it's silent. No one knows what's going on. Then comes this group coming out of Luton Town. Here come these working class men on the streets of every town and city. Who's organising it? Tommy Robinson. Where's their next city? We chose Bradford, which was where all these gangs are. And we're coming to highlight the grooming issue. So I get arrested by Special Branch. I then get released on bail. I'm not allowed to send emails. They ban me from sending emails or go straight to jail. I'm not allowed to be in a group of 2 or more English Defence League supporters. And my bail date, that I have to answer bail, is the same date that our demonstration's on. I then put in a complaint through the IPCC, the Independent Police Complaints Commission. And I've got all the paperwork for this. I put the complaint in saying, look, I believe you arrested me on this date on a fabricated charge. We find out in the investigation it was fabricated. The manager of a hotel said, I've never done anything. Yeah. So they fabricated a charge in order to come down in a big police raid. And most of this is about pressure as well, to dawn raid my house. When I first started this activism, my mum was crying, my wife was crying, my whole family were crying. They're all telling me, stop, Stephen, stop, stop, stop. And in those first 6 months, I had 3 dawn raids like this, where I was come in my house. So they were still trying to put it back in and hide it. Then we carried on for 2 years. We carried on highlighting these issues. In 2015, when the Rotherham scandal broke, people realised he was telling the truth. So that's why all these interviews I've done, they're like, well, he was right.
Who's with you now that wasn't with you? Who is the biggest proponent of you now that back in the days wasn't? Because I just recently saw Nigel Farage is no longer supportive like he used to be. He distanced himself from you. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Elon said something about Nigel Farage. He wasn't too complimentary of him like 3-4 months ago. But who is for you now? Who's starting to say, Tommy's got a point?
So Nigel Farage has never been before me. Nigel Farage has always played the political line and worried about trying to distance himself from me. What they don't realise is, so up in 2015, that's when I started my journalism. So in those early days, it was about being out on the street, getting 5,000, 10,000 people, telling people, here's what's going on. And then I realised this, So I realised, well, I need everyone to see what I've seen. I need people to know what I know. I need them to understand how Islam operates, how they think. I need them to understand the scale of this rape scandal across our country. So then I became a journalist. I started making videos. And within 6 months, I was the most watched journalist in Europe. I blew up, absolutely blew up. I started working for an organisation called Rebel Media in Canada. They offered me a job. I went to jail, come out of jail when all this scandal had been highlighted. Rebel contacted me and said, look, we want you to make some videos. I said, look, I'm trying to make money again. I'm trying to get my life back on track. I'd faced the full weight of the British establishment. Do you know, when I first started this, I knew I'd face threats of terrorism. I knew I'd face violent beatings. There's 5 Muslims in jail doing 30 years. They got caught with guns and bombs and IEDs on the way to kill me. I've had 12 government official Osman warnings telling me there's plans to murder me, not just me. My ex-wife got a knock on the door. There's plans to attack you with acid. My mum and dad, even recently, as 8 months ago, I had to fly them to another country because the police knocked on their door. There's plans to attack you. I knew that would come when you try and discuss Islam. What I didn't expect was the full weight of the British establishment to crush me, attack me, and
who's for you? Who's for you?
Me now?
Who's the loudest voice that's now for you?
Elon Musk spoke up on my behalf. Many in America. It's been very. I was sitting in jail recently, and my son was playing me recordings over the phone. Charlie Kirk, Steve Bannon, Elon Musk spoke up. The Petersons made a personal video. Tammy Peterson travelled to the prison to try and visit me. There's been a massive shift, but that shift has. I've slowly watched it, and I gave speeches in 2015, 16, 17, 18, and when I was giving the speeches, I said, when it swings from left to right, no one's going to stop it. You're not going to be able to stop it because it has to happen. This has to happen. And the only way it can happen is when the population are educated and understand what's happening. So,
yeah, but all those names you said are not in UK. Who in UK is a big supporter that's now saying we got to get to the bottom of this with influence?
Not with me. So many of the politicians now, the same politicians, whether it be Nigel Farage or the same politicians, even Kemi Badenoch or now the Conservative Party, all of them are now talking about this Grooming issue. But none of them, they still all condemn me and attack me. They still all, any of the people, do you know what's happened is, we've shifted the Overton window and made it acceptable to talk about, but many of them still say, attack me, to then feel free to discuss it. They still use me as a scapegoat. And in these figures, and this is the biggest thing for America, I was outside of courts. Once I started doing my journalism and reporting, I was outside of court in Leeds, and there was 30 men on trial. And what happened in these early cases, so once they had to start addressing these gangs, they started making arrests. And when they started making arrests, it would go to court. And you might have 10 men on trial. Say, for example, there was a case in Oxford. Now, one of the girls in Oxford, they took her tongue and they nailed her tongue to a table. This was a child. This is what the rape gang's done. Another girl in this area.
This is documented.
It's all documented. All documented. And this is why I'll get onto the reason, yeah? Another girl, they got a hot iron rod and it had the letter M. And they heated it up. And they took this 11-year-old girl and they stuck it on her bum. and they scolded her like you scold an animal. And they scolded her with the letter M because she was the property of Muhammad. They took children out and doused them in petrol. This is what they took them out and doused them in petrol in the woods and said, "We'll set you on fire." So then these children, they used them and they threatened their families. But this is all going on. So when the first cases started coming to light and they're going through the courts, this is getting reported. And what the men are saying to the girls, "You dirty kafar, you gura," which is white girl, "you filthy gura slag," everything the men were saying and the reason why they're doing it was coming out in the media. So we're getting to know. What the authorities then did is they put a blanket reporting restriction. So the first few cases, people started hearing what was going on. Then now, any of these scandals, they have a reporting restriction. So when they put a reporting restriction, for example, there was a case in Leeds, 30 of them. It was Huddersfield, one of the biggest rape gang scandals in our country's history. 30 Pakistani Muslim men. They'd been raping 100 girls, torturing them, raping them for years. And now the authorities are having to deal with them. So they take them to court. So I go outside the court and I'm reporting. And they put reporting restrictions. So this is what they do now, yeah? And those reporting restrictions prevent anyone reporting on anything that's happening. And then what happens is you have a 6-week trial. And rather than hearing the news for 6 weeks about the trial, at the end of the 6 weeks, you get 1 day reporting. Because then they lift the reporting restriction, you get 30 men convicted, but you don't hear all the details. You'll have 1 day's news rather than 6 days' news. So I stood outside the court and I said, these cases are going on up and down the country. Across our country, you don't know about it, but they're happening across the country. They're being arrested, they're being tried. And under reporting restriction legislation, the judge has no power to put restrictions on information that's already in the public domain. So I made sure not to breach the reporting restriction. I said, I named the men, I named how many victims, because this was information I knew a hell of a lot more. These men have been on bail for 2 years, running the same shops, still in contact with kids. I knew so much about them, but I didn't say it. I'm outside court. The men are coming in. As they're walking in, I said, "How are you feeling about your verdict?" They're all making threats to me. I was very calm. The judge is at the top window. His name was Judge Marston. 2 minutes later, this is on a live stream. I'm reporting. 2 minutes later, I'm arrested. "You're under arrest for a breach of the peace." I said, "What do you mean breach of the peace? What have I done?" They arrest me. They handcuff me. They take me to the police station. They don't even put me in the police station. They say, "Right, take him to court." I'm taken to court before a judge, Judge Marston. I'm not asked to plead guilty or not guilty. I get to court. I say, I get to court. I say, this is the footage. I get to court. I say, I want to speak to my solicitor. I have to speak to my solicitor. They don't allow me to speak to my solicitor. They put me before the judge. Within 2 hours, I got sentenced to 13 months in prison. And what the judge then did is put a reporting restriction on anyone being told I got sentenced to 30 months in prison. So I then land 2 hours later. I'm in HMP Hull. I ring my mother and my kids. I say, "I'm in jail. I've just got 30 months in jail." And she's like, "What?" I said, "I'm in prison. I've just been sentenced to 30 months in prison. I haven't done anything wrong." But they put a reporting restriction. But thanks to America, Australia, Canada, because you're not governed by their restrictions. So no one in the UK was allowed to talk about it. But then over that weekend, it started blowing up everywhere, which started a Free Tommy movement. I'm then transferred and taken. This is all to do with them still hiding this same problem. So I'm then taken and I'm put on solitary confinement in a Muslim majority prison. And it took 2.5 months before we got to a court of appeal. We get to a court of appeal and they find that everything they'd done was unlawful. I'm then released from prison. But during this period, and as you'll see in the back of that, I was happy, not happy. As I'm getting put in the back of that van, I say, Germany, millions are now going to watch this film. And I give an education. That video there, the entirety of that video was me talking to parents to say, this is how they do it. This is what's happening to your daughters. This is the telltale signs. What I make a point of is that I've grown up with some Muslim lads in Luton who would be appalled by what these men are doing, but understand that these men are operating in every town and city. It's still being hidden. I then got sent to jail for that. I got 13 months. 2.5 months later, I went to an appeal. I was released. I come out of that. I went into prison one person and come out another just from 2.5 months on solitary confinement. It damaged me. But this is all to do with the rape gang scandal. And the biggest problem, say in Rotherham, I then said the purpose of them sending me to jail was to prevent the public being aware of this. So when I come out of prison, I said, I'm now going to work tirelessly to make the world know what's going on. And I then started working on a 5-part series called The Rape of Britain. And I spent 12 to 18 months in a small town called Telford. Telford in the UK and I picked Telford because Telford has a 1.7% Muslim population. And trust me, if you've got Muslim communities in America, this is already happening. Yeah? It's already happening. This is happening everywhere where there's an Islamic community. So in Holland, for example, it's Moroccans. In France, it's happening. It's Lebanon. It's happening across. In the UK, it's majority Pakistani. But when you look at the demographics of all of the men, they're Afghani, they're Iraqi, all of them are from different Islamic countries. The majority are Pakistani because the majority of the UK Muslims are Pakistani. So I go into Telford, 1.7% Muslim population, spend 12 to 18 months, and I meet so many girls. I had a focus of 12 women, and I'd sit them down for 3 hours, 4 hours, and I'd interview them. And then I built a database. We've done a full-scale police-style investigation in this town. And the reason I picked this town is because I thought there's not that many Muslims there. I'll be able to find out everything about every one of them. And I can work out who's who the families are, how they operate. So we end up building a wall of men. Now, from that investigation, I got 264 names from these women. Then the police do an investigation in Telford. The police investigation identified 200 men. Out of those 200 men, the police prosecuted 11. Right? They let the rest off. So when you see rape gang scandal, when you pick any city and read the headlines, yeah? When you see rape gang scandal and you read the headlines, it's just a token gesture. They can't afford to put them all in jail. They wouldn't have the prison spaces to put them all in jail. So in Telford, 5 are dead. 5, a whole family were burned alive. Yeah? 5 of these victims just in Telford. Now, the police investigation identifies 200 men and 1,000 children that have been raped. So in Telford, with a
1,000 children have been raped.
By 1.7% Muslim population. When you look at the 1.7% Muslim population, roughly 3,500, 4,000 Muslims, you take away the women, you then take away the under-16s, you're looking at the police figures of 200 is 20%. Our figures, 264 we had named. Then there was an independent inquiry, which got 350. So you're looking at 20 to 30% of the Muslim men in that town are raping young girls. Now, this is where you get into understanding why the Labour Party have not dealt with this. Yeah, this sounds, and you can watch my 5-part series. Now, we find police officers involved, Crown Prosecution Service, politicians, the whole community are involved. And in that town, so if you've got 20 or 30% of the men that are raping these girls, some of them are being tortured, some of them are being murdered, just in this small town of Telford. What do you think is happening in my town where there's 50% Muslim population? What does anyone think? But we'll never get the figures for these towns. And this is where, and I'll get onto, this is why it's all blown up so big in January, which when Elon Musk jumped on board in highlighting this. Because in Telford, there was an inquiry, not an inquiry with statutory power. So an inquiry with statutory power would allow people to be summoned to court on oath, police, council, and they'd have to tell the truth. But the inquiry that was given didn't have that power. So it wasn't a government inquiry. They gave a solicitor-led inquiry. So the solicitor-led inquiry, without any power, identified 1,000 victims, 200 men, and told an incredible story. Now, what's happened now recently is in the city of Oldham, which is a 35% Muslim population, which has some of the most horrific rapes and torture of children, they've been crying out for an inquiry to what's happening to the children. As they're crying out, 6 times the Labour Council, because when the Muslim community get that big in the town, you ain't getting an inquiry because Labour just shut it down every time. So when they're going to try and get a vote within the council to have an inquiry into these rape gangs, it's voted down every time. So then last year, independents stood in council to say, we'll call for an inquiry. So then the independents get voted in because the non-Muslim community in the town want to tell the story of what's happened to their daughters. So you can see some of the videos. My next documentary is looking at this. I'm going to show the whole world what's gone on, yeah, with the Labour Party, because there's been a massive cover-up. So then they vote in. They then appeal to the government for a statutory power inquiry. It goes to the Labour government. Jess Phillips shuts it down. So they've voted people in to try and get the inquiry. Then they go to the government, Labour. Labour then shut it down. There's no inquiry. And then Labour are saying we'll do these little 5 inquiries without statutory power. So that it's just a complete shut.
Who's above Labour to tell Labour, hey, go investigate this? Who holds them accountable?
Well, you need to look, which my next documentary is looking at. And this is, so say in the town of Rochdale is a massive rape gang scandal. They're in every town, yeah? The local Labour councillor, Hussein was his name. Now, 10 years ago, this is all now topic of conversation. 10 years ago, when a young girl was raped, 100 girls were raped, yeah, over 100. So this young girl in this community, her local Labour representative, which is your Democrats, her local Democrat politician, her local representative, didn't go court to support her. He went to court and gave a character reference for the Muslim rapist, as did the mayor of Bolton. They went to court and testified in court, on oath, and testified that this Muslim man who's raped 100 kids is a wonderful man. He's a great man. Yeah. So they went to court and gave a character reference. What happened to him? He didn't lose his job. He didn't lose his job. I went up to question him as a journalist. I knocked at the door and said, I'm here to ask Councillor Hussain some questions. They said, come back in 2 hours. So I drive back in 2 hours. Gangs come from everywhere, smash my car up, blitz me. Because what's unthinkable is that the political power is working with the violent gangs. They're together.
What's the benefit though? What are they getting?
What are they getting?
But because back in the days, if you look at the Italian mob, right, what they did, they had them bought. So they paid them off, and it was a model. Hey, we have this many cops, this many judges, this many this many that. This doesn't seem like that's that because they're not making that kind of money.
Oh no, this is a mafia as well. The Islamic community is a mafia, total mafia.
So do they have the judges and the cops and all those guys bought?
Well,
because they're paying them off.
Episode 1 of the Rape of Britain that we produced, we track down. We get witnesses and testimonies. So this girl's been raped, and this girl's Nicole, very brave young girl. She's been raped at the age of 13. She gets pregnant. They get DNA from the fetus of the baby. Yeah, they get the DNA. So we have all the paperwork. 100% DNA match on the Pakistani rapist who drives a Lamborghini, who's age 23 or 24. Yeah, so they get the DNA match. No further action. There was the police, no further action. Okay. Now this girl's dad at the time worked in the restaurant of one of the gangs because they're all coordinated. Yeah, he used to work there. Now we had 2 different witnesses who witnessed the chief inspector, police officer, in the restaurant with the gangs. It's the head police officer because it works as a mafia. They're making so much money. You know, they control the drugs, the violence in every town and city is controlled by the Muslim community in the UK now. They are the mafia. They control everything. And whoever controls the drugs controls the towns, controls the streets. Whoever controls the streets controls the towns. They have
What kind of money are they making?
Insane money.
Give me an example.
Millions.
That's not a lot though. Like, are they, because to own judges,
I won't say they own judges, to own police officers, yeah? So they own police officers, which we show. So I go.
Police officers, to be able, so for me, to be able to get away with this, you have to either bribe, where you have intel on them, which they don't. That's not their business model. You have to buy local small judges and, cops and senators and Congress and buy them out, which they're not making that kind of money to be able to do that. You have to be feared because they could come to you, but fearing them to do what to you?
They don't have to pay.
I'm trying to really find out, like, why?
Political power. They don't have to pay.
Yeah, okay, so maybe let me ask a different question. So Elon Musk said something about Starmer, right? He tweets something about him. I pulled up right now, prime ministers in UK from 2005 to 2025. Tony Blair, you got Gordon Brown, Labour Party, Labour, Cameron, Conservative, Theresa May, Conservative, Boris Johnson, Conservative, Liz Truss, Conservative, Rishi Sunak, Conservative, and Keir Starmer, Conservative, Labour. Yeah. You mean David, Theresa, Boris, Liz, and Rishi? While this is going on, they knew about it and they didn't do anything about it?
All of them knew about it. Well, so, but remember, they were responsible for open border mass immigration. The reason being, open border mass immigration, the problems I'm talking about are the problems that come from that. Now, if you were allowed to really look at it, then whose failure is it? Why are these girls getting raped? It comes down to their political failure, their decisions to allow mass immigration into our towns and cities. So that's why they must cover it up. Because if it's not covered up, all these problems that I talk about, all the problems I've seen, all these rapes, all the gangs, all the terrorism, all the jihad, all of that, they've imported. And that is their failure. So if you're allowed to look at it and investigate it and question it, then you're going to start looking at them. And then the public are going to look at them and say, you did this. You did this. And every one of them have risen to the top with dirty hands.
Okay, fair. So royal family, who has more power, prime minister or the royal family? You think the royal family is going to allow, we're Americans, right? So we're on a completely different place here. But when we think about your politics, can't the royal family sit there and say, what are we doing? The rich history that we have, are we going to sit here and be okay with this happening to us?
Okay, so look at a case in Manchester. Young girl, what's her name, Victoria? Young girl, 15, drugged with heroin by a 55-year-old Muslim man, raped. When she was killed, that launched a police investigation. They made, I think, 100 arrests. when they made these arrests, there was the police officer in charge. I'm speaking from memory here, but I've done this before. So there's a police officer in charge. They make 100 arrests. They arrest them. They give them their court date, their pending court cases, and then the Crown Prosecution Service collapse. Gone. Everything's gone. Remember, this is when they're still covering up, yeah? So the police were forced into doing an investigation because a young girl had died. Then they uncover all of these rape gangs and they start looking at them. Victoria, so it was Victoria. Rape arrest as part of new grooming. Oh, so now they're making arrests in 2020, yeah? But she wasn't killed in 2020. Get when she was killed. Now, when she was killed, 2003. So remember, this is when we're still in big cover-up mode, yeah? So they make loads of arrests in this case. They then they find the gang. They find that all the ones, hundreds of them are operating, just raping young kids, torturing them. They make arrests. They get them all ready for court. They collapse the entire trial. The lead police officer who collapsed that trial won the highest recommendation 6 months later from our royal family. The level of cover-up.
6 months later from royal family?
From the royal family, he won the biggest award you can get, like, for his work. Yeah, he won the reward for covering this up. Because what you have to understand is, they were so fearful of this coming out, and they always say they were fearful of race riots, fearful of race tensions, because you can't allow the public to realise that literally members of the Islamic community are raping their way through our nation. And that is all to do with open border mass immigration. Say like the Democrats now, they're opening up. Many problems in American cities are going to come from the problems that have come from the men who they've imported and allowed in. So what do they want to do? They just hide it. And this was a mass cover-up for... Up until the formation of the English Defence League, they had successfully hid this for 30 to 40 years. So you can imagine the level of animosity and frustration they have with me. So that's why, and every arrest in the first 6 months was done to intimidate, scare, and silence. It didn't work. We're now fast forward. I'm arrested again on rape gangs. I've just been put in prison again. I've just come out. We're 10 days in. I was released from prison 10 days ago. I spent the last 7 months on solitary confinement for showing the public the truth. And what was that truth about? That truth, I have to be careful what I say here because I'll go straight back to jail. I'm currently under another gagging order where I was only released. I would have spent the rest of my life in prison for this film. I made a film. I'm a journalist. I made a film and they sentenced me to 18 months in prison for that film. Now, what did that film expose? That film exposed the problems from a refugee that was imported in. If people were allowed to understand the truth of what had happened in that area, they'd be looking at the government, because the public didn't want Syrian refugees brought into Great Britain, but the government, during the height of the ISIS chaos that was going on in Syria, brought in 20,000. The conservative government brought in 20,000, and the problems I spoke about in this film were to do with one refugee. What about the rest? And they'd hid it. They hid this entire story. I would go into detail on this. I'm simply not allowed to. I will go straight back to jail and face 2 years if I sit and give you any details about what went on. I made a film that became the most watched film in British history, 167 million views.
Silenced?
Silence. I made that film.
This is the Syria case where the kid watched the video, had a broken hand, the other guy comes and hits him, and you claim...
I have to be careful here. I wouldn't make that. Even me having that discussion where you make the claim now, they'll probably bang me straight up in jail.
Why though?
I'm under an order. For me, so I made a film. They take me to court. I make a film. Remember that court lawfare is used, and it's been used against me for 15 years. It's not just used against me. It's used against anyone who whistleblowers or speaks out. For example, you know what you saw with Russiagate? You saw the situation with Russiagate. Now, many in the UK still won't understand what happened with Russiagate. Russiagate, where the FBI feeds sources of information to the national media. The national media run those stories, which are bullshit. They run those stories. Then when they wanted to get a warrant off of a judge in order to put surveillance on the opposition, which was Donald Trump, they produce their evidence and they also say, look, there's these national media stories. Well, those national media stories come from the FBI giving them the information. Now, in that case there with Russiagate, they used Christopher Steele, an MI6 agent from the UK, who made this up. Yes, they use a legitimate source as an MI6 agent. That same MI6 agent is the one they still use against me. So the media create the stories of news to attack people. It's like the weapon. We live in a totalitarian state in Great Britain. I don't think any Americans really understand, well, I hope you do understand, that you are the only place left in the world that has free speech. You are the only place. But the American establishment now under Donald Trump, they know lawfare because they saw it with Russiagate. They know how coordinated the FBI worked with the media. They all combined together in order to attack. That's happened to me. Now, Donald Trump is a billionaire and he had a massive platform to highlight this. I've been fighting this as a working class kid from Luton Town. And I've managed to build my own platform. And even through the censorship, remember, they censored me to a level where if you mention my name on Facebook, they delete your account. I was up there with mass terrorists and killers, my name. I've never been convicted or tried for anything to do with hate crime. I've never even had an arrest for anything to do with it. Nothing I say is hateful, it's facts. Now, unfortunately for them, the facts spell out the problems that they've imported into our country.
Let me ask you, in regards to that case with Silence, the article says that you ended up having to pay $100,000 and $500,000 of legal fees.
More than that, they bankrupted me for £1.5 million. Now, so what they did is, a story blows up in the national news, a manufactured story. I prove it's manufactured, right? They twisted the whole story. Now, the problem is, how many stories like this are they feeding us? This story was on CNN. This story was on ABC. This story was on China News. This story was worldwide. And the story the public was fed was just lies. It was just manufactured lies. And the media blew it up. Why did they blow it up? Because it suited the open border globalist narrative of mass immigration, that the Syrian was that the refugee is the victim and the English are racist bullies. So they blow this story up. I make a video countering it, saying, this isn't true. They then attack me using lawfare. They put me through the courts. They tell me to apologise. I say, I'm not apologising because I'm truthful. Because this is what I'm saying, and giving witness testimonies of. I'm not going to apologise. They then bankrupt me. But when they bankrupt me, I then went and wore a hidden camera. And I got the school teachers. This was about an incident at school. I got so many people on camera, they were paid not to tell the truth. So I produced all that. Yeah, you saw it.
Yeah.
Do you know everything you saw in that film?
Mm-hmm.
Not one single British journalist has reported it. Most watched British documentary in history. Not one single journalist has made any report of it. Now, for the establishment, so people understand when you Google my name, if you Google my name and you look at my criminal record history, if you hadn't seen that film, Patrick, you would just read that I lied. You'd read that I lied. Because all the mainstream narrative just says that I lied and made things up. But unfortunately for them, when I made that film, I knew what that film showed. That film was a far bigger story than Tommy Robinson. It's much bigger than me. Lawfare has been used against Donald Trump, against Steve Bannon, against Alex Jones, £1 billion, against Marie Le Pen now, can't stand an election, what happened in Romania, what's happened to Geert Wilders, what's happened to Morten Messerschmidt. Any political leaders, any populist people who have stood up and made any challenges or highlighted any of the globalist narrative have come under attack with lawfare. So my film showed that, and I knew when I released it, I knew it would be prison. And prison for me could be death, because our entire prison system is controlled by Islamic jihadist gangs. I mean, the public, if they...
Yours.
Now, yours will be soon as well. America needs to wake the hell up. They will be converting right now in every American prison. The people in control of the conversions, they will infiltrate every institution in your state, and they will turn the people against you. The first they went for in the British prison system is the black community. And they are converting blacks like that. And same in your American system. In your prison system, they are recruiting, and they guarantee you, if you don't get a grip of it now, you'll be sitting in 10 years' time, scratching your heads as you think you've got problems with different gangs in jail. Every one of your prisons will be controlled by Islamic gangs. Like the whole of the UK prison system, every prison is controlled by Islam. Every one. There's no defense against it. And why is there no defense? Because the prison authorities know it's happening, the government knows it's happening, but everyone's hands are tied behind their back through political correctness. You have to understand the power of that political correctness. It was that powerful that every police force, every politician, they all just went into silence. They know children are being raped across the country, but none of them would speak about it. And anyone who did speak about it lost their jobs, went to prison, got silenced, got attacked. Everyone, because remember how many of them have got dirty hands. So if you look now, Keir Starmer was in charge of the Crown Prosecution Service. Keir Starmer was in charge of the Crown Prosecution Service when they decided not to prosecute, not just the Islamic rape gangs, Jimmy Savile. There's a cover-up going across the board.
Whether you agree with Tommy or not, guess what? You can now get a hold of him on Minect. He will respond back on Minect. You can simply download the app. He's officially on there. Ask him any question. You agree with him. You don't agree with him. An article, something you saw, but now you can get direct contact with Tommy Robinson on Minect.
And they all have dirty hands. So of course they can't allow. When I look, which I'm going to do in my next film, which is why they probably hate me. Do you know, when you're in prison, they're not allowed to hold you in solitary confinement. Yeah, I believe they've tried to destroy me each time I've gone to jail. So this most recent time, I went in as a civil offender because I made as a journalist, I made a film, and they give me an injunction. Remember, these non-disclosure agreements you saw in the film, injunctions, things like this, they're being used across the board in the West to shut everyone up, whether it be in hospitals, whether they pay people to be silent. So you're not really getting the truth. And the mainstream media are never giving us the truth. And I can give you more examples of stories like that. But they're silencing everyone. So when I had that film, I thought, right, I didn't want to release it because I didn't want to go to jail, but I did want to release it. So I made the decision, I sat my family down and said, I have to do this. Like, I have to let the public know. And I thought, if they come for me, when that film leaked, it had 200,000 views. When they come for me first, it had 200,000 views. So I knew, I sort of made a video saying, God, send me to jail. Because I need the world to see. The world needs to see lawfare. They need to understand how it's operated. You can't just keep reading headlines on people. You can't read a headline on this person being a sexual offender or this person being that without knowing what's going on behind the scenes of that. How come every single person who speaks up all of a sudden, even you look at Russell Brand, for example, Russell Brand was the darling of the left. He spoke out against Big Pharma. Now he's facing loads of prosecutions for sexual crimes. It's like across the board, anyone who tries to bring any of these conversations to the forefront is attacked.
What's your solution? How do you fix this at this point? How do you fix it? The percentage you got is not a small number.
Well, we fix it. You've started it in the United States of America. We had no hope until your election. So your election and the ripple that's coming out of the United States for free speech. Do you know how I've just been in prison and I sat there and I listened to Keir Starmer and I listened to him in the Oval Office talking to J.D. Vance and President Trump, talking about free speech. Do you know how infuriating it is and insulting it is when I'm sat on solitary confinement for making a film? No one's challenged the facts that are in the film. No one. Not one journalist has even spoke about it. None of them. And in 2000, I know I'm going all over here. When I spoke about, they give me 13 months in prison for reporting outside a court case. When I come out of court that time, when I got released from prison, I was told, I got my computer. I logged into my computer. Two of my old employees who worked for me, one of them was still logged into the emails. So I went through the emails. We have an organisation in the United Kingdom called Hope Not Hate. Is it Media Matters?
Media Matters, yes.
They're the left wing.
Mm-hmm.
That is the equivalent in the UK of Hope Not Hate.
Got it.
So Hope Not Hate received George Soros funding. Their job, you don't need laws to prohibit free speech because these organisations who receive millions of pounds, anyone who speaks out with any influence or education or anything, they find out where they work, they contact their HR departments, they stifle free speech by attacking, smearing and lying. I come out of jail, I turn the laptop on, I'm still logged into one of my employees' emails. I start going through his emails and I start looking back, maybe I shouldn't have. I'll find out he's in contact with Hope Not Hate. So I'm looking thinking, he's employed by me. And he wasn't just employed by me, he was working with Alex Jones. He was working with Lawrence Southern. He was working with so many people in the right. Everyone in the right he was working with. And then I looked at the times and dates and they're paying for his travel, they're sending him money. I think, what's going on here? So I ring him up and I find out then that Panorama, you heard of Panorama? Mm. Panorama is the BBC's flagship documentary maker. So they are seen in the UK as the most authentic, investigative documentary makers. What they say is factual, yeah? I see that Panorama are working on a piece against me. So I ring and I then make a documentary. And in this documentary, what they're doing against me, I send a girl wearing a hidden camera. So Panorama are known for covert surveillance. They investigate and they expose things. So I sent a girl to wear a covert camera into Panorama. The head of Panorama's name was John Sweeney. This man was the biggest face of the BBC. Yeah, he goes in. I send the girl in, and I get her wearing a wire, and I get him on camera saying that they're going to make me into a sexual figure. They're going to make me Harvey Weinstein. Yeah, so they're going around all my old employees. Anyone I fell out with, this is how it works. This is the operation. So anyone I fell out with, anyone who had contact with me from when I was a child, this group will contact him. But the BBC don't contact them. In step Hope Not Hate. In step an organisation who can sit down and pay you, I'll give you £20,000, yeah? Then they pay them £20,000, they tell them what they need to say, they then bring in Panorama, whose hands are clean, yeah? They sit down, they use this source of information, they make a documentary talking about me, and then they show it to the world. And then they have source after source after source. But what you don't get to see is that those sources are being paid. So I got covert recordings of this man, John Sweeney. I get him sitting down saying, right, what I want you to say. He doesn't realise it's on camera. What I want you to say, tell me this, tell me this, tell me this. Do we have a deal? Yeah. Then the girl, so I send an ex-employee in. They contact an ex-employee who didn't like me because I sacked her. She comes to me, says, it's sick what they're about to do to you. I've got to tell you. She hated me. Yeah. She says, no, this isn't right what they're going to do to you. And I shit myself. And the reason they've done this, the government, when I come out of jail, the government paid research was going onto social media, Facebook, to find out people's opinions on me. Now, the reason being that 600,000 British people signed a petition demanding my release from prison. This is 2017, when I'm in jail for reporting outside the court case. 30,000 people marched on Parliament. These sort of numbers aren't thinkable in the UK. It's worrying for the government. So they're working in on this documentary to take me down. I then say to the girl, right, okay. So they're contacting you. She doesn't like me. She could have sat down and lied to them about anything. They would have broadcast it, yeah? So I said, okay, can we put a camera on you? Let's go to them. You tell them about an argument we've had, yeah? We did have an argument. It was about a demonstration. It's about Mohammed hijab. Nothing about sex or anything. And she goes to him and says, right, I've got a recording on Tommy Robinson. He's really aggressive and he's shouting at me. And then she says, but I was screaming at him, and she starts saying it was my fault. And he says, don't worry, we'll clip all those bits out. He doesn't realise he's on camera. He goes, we're going to make this into a sexual thing against Tommy Robinson. That's what he says on camera, yeah? So I'm sitting there getting all this. She comes back, and what I did, now they're the best investigations in the world. So I sit and get a laptop with this girl who doesn't like me. I said, well, I'm at home in bed, yeah? She goes on the computer and she looks up sendafaketext.com. So she sends herself a text message that looks like it's from me, saying, if you work with Panorama, I'm going to bury you, you bitch. So we're sitting together. I said, see, I haven't sent this text message. I'm in bed. Yeah? But these are working. Let's see if they even check if this is legit. So she does this message, sendafaketext.com. John Sweeney, they're trying to contact me because they've been working on all this dirt they've got on me. So you see what you're seeing here. So what I do is I go and set up a studio like this. I put a camera on the wall. I put a screen on the wall. And I only give them a day's notice. I said, right, I'll meet you. It has to be on my grounds. Meet me here. And my heart's like this. Because Panorama are going to finish me. They're about to tell the whole country I'm a sex case. They're about to tell the whole country all these things about me. And he sits down. But what we find out in this, that my two old employees are being blackmailed. So I ring my old employees who are working with Hope Not Hate. I ring them and say, Caleb, I've got someone inside Hope Not Hate. I know you met them on this day at this time, but I'm blagging them. I've got it from the emails. I know you met them. He's like, Tommy, they've been blackmailing us for the last year. How are they blackmailing you? When we lost our job with Rebel Media, we were so annoyed with Rebel Media that we went to these groups, we took money off them to give information on the right wing. Yeah. I said, okay. And they're going to expose that we've done this. They've got evidence we've done this. So then they've forced us, we've got to help take you down. And they threatened us with the police, all these different things, politicians. Now, Hope Not Hate, at the head of Hope Not Hate are politicians. Hope Not Hate are the deep state. You want to see the deep state? It's Hope Not Hate. So I've done 2 documentaries, yeah? This is why they hate me. So the Panorama think they're taking me down. I then get all this recorded information on them. I sit down for an interview. They sit down for Panorama with Caleb, my old employee. He does an interview. Present in the interview with Panorama that we pay for, BBC, are Hope Not Hate. Hope Not Hate, when he doesn't say enough negative stuff about me, they take him outside and they say, you better go in there and say this, you better go in there and say that. So when I sit down with John Sweeney from Panorama, and this is all on this documentary, I sit down and say, whose documentary is this? Is it BBC's? He says, yeah. I said, so it's yours. So it's nothing to do with any organisation. Any other, there are, because Hope Not Hate are named by the Swedish government as a far left extremist organisation. George Soros funds them. They're a radical group, but they have establishment power. Yeah, they're used by the establishment to destroy people. They do. The media can't offer you money. The police can't. They can't entrap you. They do it. They're the group that comes in and does it. So then John Sweeney sits down and I said, would you ever, who's working on this? He said, us. I said, so this is not a Hope Not Hate documentary? He says, no. So I then have messages. I said, really? That's not what they say here. And I said, look on the screen, John. I said, John, would you ever tell anyone what to say in a documentary? Would you do that?
You didn't do that.
Yeah, I said, would you ever do that? And he says, no. I said, no, I just said press play. And all the BBC's producers are sat there. Now, I've done loads of...
Is this video live?
It's all on there. It's all on there. You've got to see it because they all put their heads in their hands. All the producers, you know, when you do a documentary, this was the government.
What minute is it on?
This is it. This is me and him talking now. So this is the bit where you hear them. They're saying they're blackmailing them. See the hand on the head?
Yeah.
Play that bit. This finished them. That's their producers.
Said you've got to do like Sky or one mainstream media thing, and then I went back to London to drop something off and to go. Thanks, name. So Caelan was left in. What do you mean?
I mean, they snuck into his room. This is the deepest, maddest stuff. They snuck into his room when he was asleep. Hope not hate. It's all in this documentary. They got him into a position, sexual. He's gay, that my ex-employee. Yeah. But it's all in here. The recordings are all in here. Now, I've done so many documentaries over the years with the mainstream media. You usually just have the presenter and someone else. When I've done this one, all the producers were there. But they had no idea what I had on them. So I said, would you tell anyone what to say? And he said, no. I said, press play. And then it's a recording of him covert. Wow. And all of them just go like this. And they're sitting. Now, once I got this information, I got so much, but this exposed them so bad. Panorama, yeah? Welcome. And look, you see those bits there? What I did is I played the beat. Listen to this. Just a yes or no. It's a simple yes or no. Okay.
We must ensure we avoid bias or an imbalance of views. Our output will be based on fairness, openness, and straight dealing. Contributors will be treated honestly and with respect.
No, they were setting me up. Everything you think you know. Do you know we hear about fake news? Donald Trump spoke about fake news. I nailed them, yeah? But what happened from this? When I was first exposed, remember I used a fake name when I started the English Defence League because I was scared for my family. There was a journalist called Stephen Bird for the Times newspaper. He uncovered me on the front page of the Times newspaper. I kept in a relationship with him. So when I got all this, I contacted him. I said, mate, I have got a panorama making up allegations. I've got them covertly recorded on everything, yeah? He come to see me. I played it to him. He said, mate, this is massive. I said, yeah, John Sweeney, they're fucked. Like, they're in trouble here. Big trouble. He said, let me go see my editors. He come back the next day. He said, Tommy, I'm not allowed to run it. So what do you mean you're not allowed to run it? So I'm not allowed to run it. I said, you're meant to be a journalist. How can you not be allowed to run the biggest breaking story that exposes the BBC there's ever been? How can you not? So he wasn't allowed to run it. I then hired the biggest screen in the country. I played this documentary outside the BBC on the biggest screen. I put it online. Within 24 hours, it had 2 million views.
What year is this? 19?
18, 19. I was deleted 24 hours later. Facebook removed me. YouTube removed me. I was deleted from every single social media. And the Attorney General prosecuted me for the crime I'd already been released from prison for. I went straight back to jail. And when they'd done that, you know, to stop this film, what Facebook did is made mention of my name illegal. So you can't share any content from Tommy Robinson. You can't mention the name of Tommy Robinson. Now, all of this was in response to this film. Now, this film went out. That's us showing it. This film went out. You have to watch that film to understand. It's the biggest expose the BBC's ever faced. And their response to it was to end me again. Yeah? But they thought that their documentary that they'd created with fake news was going to end me. And I spun it and produced it and ended his. And as I'm talking to him, we have a big argument. I said, "You're about to ruin my life." And
is that in the
all in there?
Rob, can you go to that part?
So you'll see. Yeah,
what minute would it be in?
So play the film again. Fast forward. Keep going. They're the covert recordings of him lying. I got him being racist, homophobic, talking about shooting gays. Head of the BBC. I got him nailed on everything. Everything they accused us of is them. Do you know the comments he made about working class? Do you know, so you understand the working class? He said, we heard about someone being working class. He said, we wanted to go visit this work. In the green room in the BBC, there was someone who was working class. You know, like you'd go and see an animal in the Mongolian Mongolian jungle or something like that, he said. Like, that's how they view us. That's the comments he made. So he calls me from scumbag Irish background, as in poor, because my mum's Irish and poor. This is the way they view us. And this nailed it. But if you keep going, you'll see at the end when I get up, like,
Wow.
but this, and do you know the fake text? So send to faketext.com. When we're going through all this, he kept going for his pocket. And I'm playing. I said, no, hold on. One more thing. Let's see what he's saying here. So I'm playing. I said, would you ever be racist, John? No. Press play. Homophobic, John? Press play. This, John? Press play. And on everything. And then at the end, he gets out of his pocket and he says, yeah, Tommy, you said you'd bury her. I just looked at the camera and said, I told you. They didn't even check it because it suited their narrative. So they say, like yourself, if I say I want to make a hit documentary on you, this is what the BBC do. That's what they do on everyone. You've seen the whole, I don't know what to believe in any of the cases. So when they go Andrew Tate, when they go all these different people, they'll go through every single person you've ever fell out with. Now, how many of those people will be willing to make stuff up, especially if you give them a 20 grand check? Yeah. So this is Hope Not Hate working with these. I produced the BBC documentary. Is that him with a bit of paper? First plate? Down. John says he would give me the right to reply, to which I would say it's fake. But the fake allegation that I threatened to murder my ex-female employee would effectively be aired to millions of people across the world. And I'm certain every national newspaper would run with the headline, Tommy Robinson threatens to kill female employee. I wanted to prove, and I've just proved, how easy it is for fake news to be created and for people to be targeted and their lives destroyed.
You have been harmed. And John, this is a piece of deception.
My solicitor is currying a court injunction against you.
Okay. Oh, fantastic.
Against you.
So is this a lie?
This is fake news exposed.
Very good.
Okay.
Is this a
John,
lie, Tommy?
John, I suggest you get home.
Yes. Is this a lie?
I never sent that message from this phone. This is my phone.
Oh, you didn't send it from that phone?
It wasn't sent from the phone. I didn't send it.
Hold on. It wasn't sent from the phone. I didn't send it. Is this a lie?
You'll be able to catch it all in my documentary. You'll be able to catch it all in my documentary.
No, we haven't finished our documentary.
No, we have finished. In fact, John, you'll finish your career. You finish your career.
You think so?
I know so.
I
know so. Homophobia, racism.
I'm not a homophobe.
You are.
And I'm not a racist.
You are. And I'm not.
Okay.
What you
was is a lie.
What the establishment.
And what this is, mate, this is a skit show.
What happened?
They put him on gardening leave for 9 months, and then he was gone. And then they tried to bury it. No, remember, this documentary, not one single British media reported on it. They put him on gardening leave. He was the head of the face of the BBC. 9 months later, they sack him. And then when they sacked him, he come out and said, Tommy Robert, he made it. He said it was all because of me. Tommy, his career's gone. He's gone. Yeah. Well, I say gone. They still bring him back.
How well did this clip do in the States, in America?
It was silenced and probably not that well.
I've never seen this.
No, watch that documentary. It finishes them. Yeah. But what people need to understand is, if Panorama are doing that to me, every single story, Panorama were used for the chemical weapons used by Assad. Yeah. It's like, really? I don't believe a word you say. Assad had already won the war. Why is he using chemical weapons? So all of these different things.
Go back to the question, though. I asked you the question. So the question was, all right, so here's the problem. Here's the issue. What's taking place? What's your solution? How do you solve this in your country while you don't have the royal family support? You don't have the prime minister support. He used to build these guys out. You don't have you don't have anybody. How are you going to solve it?
I believe my role is to wake people up with my documentary formats, because when enough of the public understand what's happening, remember, most of them have been lied to. Most of them think anyone who stops me in the street that doesn't like me, when I ask them why, people might say, you're a racist. What have I ever said that's racist? Yeah, I've never said anything racist. So, but they have this opinion of who they think I am.
How do they treat you? I heard you went to a restaurant to have dinner, and you got kicked out after an hour of sitting there. Then the manager comes out and said, we can't serve you. Our employees don't feel very uncomfortable with you. How is it for you in the streets of UK right now?
It's changed.
Better or worse?
Better, far better. I get heroes reception everywhere I go now. So that restaurant. So obviously there's a break. London's like a different country to the rest of the UK as well. Yeah, London's very different. Population of London, it's not a working class city. So I get a good reception in most places. But this happened. This was this week. This was in the last 10 days coming out of custody. But you see, Hope Not Hate, who fabricated that story, Hope Not Hate were involved. I then made, Hope Not Hate were the government NGO. I then made an expose documentary on Hope Not Hate. I finished them. I got proof that how many people they paid to. So what they create the source of information. The media then act as a weapon. They take illegitimate sources who are lying, who are being paid, and then they pump it to you, the public, day in, day out. That's my Home My Hate Expose documentary. This is the reason I had to be censored. This is the reason I was removed from social media, from X, from Twitter. So Elon Musk gave me back my voice. And the reason was that we were bypassing the media, going straight into people's lounges on their phones and showing them, here's what they're doing. So when you say, how do we tackle it? If the population, I always say, if the population were aware of the risk to Great Britain, there'd be a revolution tomorrow. If you knew what's coming, if everyone in Britain knew what's coming, if they knew what Islam's going to do, if they knew the attack on freedom, if we knew the true agenda of those in control of us and what they want for us, there'd be a revolution tomorrow. But they don't know because they're lied to, they're controlled continuously, which is why the biggest thing we have is free speech. But that's why
you don't have free speech.
That's why they attack it.
You don't have free speech. You just had a lady, Rob, if you can play this clip, Christian lady is praying silent prayers. I got 3 names here. Isabel Vaughn Spruce, a Christian pro-life volunteer, was arrested twice in Birmingham for silently praying near a abortion clinic. Adam Smith Connor, a military veteran, was convicted in October of last year for silently praying near an abortion clinic in Bournemouth, and he was fined £9,000. Livia Toshiki Bolt in April of 2025 was convicted, this is last month, for standing near an abortion clinic in southern England, holding a sign that read, "Here to talk if you want." Despite the sign not referencing abortion or religious matters, she was found guilty of breaching the buffer zone and was ordered to pay £20,000. Here's the clip of one of them, Rob, if you can play it.
Are you protesting?
No.
Are you here to brave the lives of unborn children?
As I've mentioned to one of your colleagues before, I think that's a little bit of a leading question. No, I'm not, actually, today.
Can the actions be carried out elsewhere?
I'm not doing any actions. I'm just simply thinking silently in my head.
Okay, and why have you chose to use location to sign?
This is an abortion centre. I'm praying for those who've been hurt by abortion.
So, well, I said before, are you here to pray for the lives of unborn children?
Yes.
So, yeah.
I said no.
You did not.
I'm praying for those who've been hurt by abortion.
Hurt by abortion?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. So are you aware there's a public slave protection order in place here?
Yes, I don't know if you know, but I have actually been arrested twice. I've gone to court and been acquitted for allegedly my silent prayers. I've actually received an email from the police telling me I'm allowed to be in this area. And I don't know if you're familiar with that situation at all.
Is it Breeding area?
Yes, that's right. That's why I was arrested previously. So yes, I'm very much aware there's a PSPO in place.
Okay. Are you aware that you're breaching the public order?
Listen, read it easy. Breathing like the sequence.
I'm not breaching it, no.
Will you move from here to outside?
She ends up getting arrested.
You wouldn't know about this if it wasn't for someone like Elon Musk buying X, because the level of censorship and control that they took back through social media, through big tech. So when I'm on about free speech, no, we don't have free speech, but we need to reach the public with what's happening.
Is YouTube open in UK?
YouTube just opened my account last week.
No, YouTube period. So people on YouTube see these videos. In UK, see these videos on YouTube.
So
meaning YouTube is accessible in UK.
Yeah, YouTube's accessible, but I was banned up until last week.
I'm aware of that, right? So meaning the people can see these things and sit there and decipher between the BS and say, what do you mean BBC? What do you, this is not true. Is that causing ruckus for people to want to rise up and do something about it?
That's causing I say we're on the border of a revolution. I've been saying that. We held demonstrations just before I went to jail in that 12-month period. We went from 30,000 to 100,000 to 150,000 people. These numbers are unheard of in our capital city. We're now planning one on the 13th of September, a free speech event. I think we'll have in excess of 500,000 people turning up.
So
the public are awake now.
So you're talking about that. And then we see when October 7th happens and there's a video, I believe, I don't know when this video was, Rob, with Mohammed Hijab and quite a few of his crew out there in the streets.
Hunting down Jews.
Yeah, so this is...
They don't get arrested.
So, but why... Can you play this clip, Rob? This is where?
This in London. Look at us.
It was terrifying. The boys had to be rescued by the police as bottles and eggs rained down on them.
The thing is, they just don't get arrested.
Why though?
Because of the two-tier policing, so people understand.
Another job that
It's-
a police officer that he'd killed
The law's not enforcing it.
saw it again.
You saw this.
However, when I want to show this, so keep playing. It's,
when
those Zionists came in with their dogs, that was an act of provocation. So what we're saying now, and I'm making it very clear so everyone understands, if those dogs come close to us again, we will see it as an act of aggression, and we will kill those dogs. Right, we'll put them down.
Hijab and Dawa then led the crowd to Speaker's Corner, and as the mob marched through London streets, screaming, "We'll find some Jews, we want their blood," the police did nothing. Let that sink in. They're calling for our literal blood, and the police are just...
He's an activist within the Jewish community. Does good work.
Lord, is no on the blood. This is the nice anti-Jewish edition.
A couple of hours later, we were violently
It's not a
assaulted.
threat in London. You can do this and you're not getting arrested. That's not.
No, they can do this and not get arrested. If someone else makes a comment against transgenderism, if someone else makes a comment against Islam, they'll probably get their door kicked off by the SWAT team. They're protected. The Islamic community are protected and can act this way. Do you know there's a case? Some Muslims drove down from the north of England into the Jewish area. They drove through in their cars with speakers and megaphones talking about raping the Jewish daughters. Yeah, they got arrested because there was such a furor. They didn't get prosecuted. They did not get prosecuted. Now, do you know how many people are being arrested? We hear so much from our politicians about free speech or lying about free speech. The amount of arrests in the UK compared to Russia, China, any of these countries for social media, the UK is the highest out of all of them. You could combine all these countries together and it's the UK. So we keep the UK government pretend about free speech whilst absolutely attacking anyone who goes against their narrative and their agenda. The Islamic community, when you look at the local, there was a Gaza, you know, we now have 5 MPs who got voted in on the Gaza issue. Basically 5 jihadist MPs now are in parliament, yeah? When the Labour Party, who have pandered, bowed and surrendered to the Islamic community for their block vote, over the Israel situation since October 7th, many Muslims started stepping away from them. And it showed how many seats they lost or how close the votes become, which is why then when you look at the Labour Party, now on the Islamic rape gang scandal, if they give this national inquiry, they'd lose the Muslim vote. They'd lose the Muslim vote to the independents who are rising anyway, and they'd lose power. Jess Phillips, the one that Elon Musk was hammering, I think she only won her seat by 700 votes. Now, when she won her seat by 700 votes, she only wins her seats by getting on her knees, bending and surrendering to the Islamic community, because that's how big the Islamic community is in that community. Now, if this is happening now, they say 5, 6, 7% of the UK population is Islamic. What does anyone think it's going to be like when it gets to 20%? 25%. And you even hear figures like Nigel Farage saying by 2050, there's going to be this many Muslims. So we now have to start preparing and working along with Islam. It's like, no, we need to stop that. We need to stop.
How do you stop it though?
Well, they did stop it by trying to address the benefit system. So for example, my local MP, my local imam has 14 children with 3 wives. That's 3 council houses.
Who is this?
My local imam.
What's his name?
Kadir Bashk. He was the leader of Luton Islamic Centre. When I started my activism, Luton Islamic Centre was a radical jihadist centre. He was given a seat in the council with a Luton in Harmony programme. I used to try and expose, I translated everything off of his website.
How do you spell his name?
Kadir, Q-A-D, put Luton Islamic Centre, Kadir.
Luton Islamic Center.
Yeah. Yeah, guess what this used to be? And then Kadir was the imam, put imam. That used to be the old synagogue in Luton. Imam. Yeah, now go down, you'll get the news clip. So basically, when I first started my activism, I said this guy's an extremist. And I tried tackling him. But he was given a seat at they created a Luton in Harmony programme, and this imam was part of the Luton in Harmony programme. He was on local radio. This is the problem. The journalists don't challenge.
I'd like to know who he is. I'd like to actually pull him up. Rob, can you find him or no?
Yeah, so how do you spell Basque? B-A, you got to have it, Mike. Q-U.
Go. Spirit backs.
Here it is. That's him. This is
So he is got 3 wives, 14 kids.
3 wives, 14
Him
kids.
right there?
No.
No, that's not him. No.
Yeah, right here.
Is this him?
Now, there'll be loads of news on him when you get a spelling it. That's him there. That's him. So you see him, yeah? Silver-tongued, Luton Islamic Centre. So I start my activism and I try telling the council and telling everyone, no, these guys are the bad guys, yeah? He gets a seat in the Luton in Harmony programme. Now, he's on the radio talking about me. Now, I live in Luton. So I just walk into the radio station. You'll find this. Pink News run the story. So if you Google Pink News and his name, you'll find the story. He's on the radio. So I go walking in and the radio host is like, well, seeing as we're talking about Tommy Robinson and he is from Luton, he's just walked in. I said, yeah, I walked in. I want to ask Kadir a few questions. Let me sit down. So I sit down and I say, Kadir.
With him.
With him. And he's there. Because the journalists won't ask him the questions. Yeah. So I sit down and say, Kadir, you're part of the Luton in Harmony programme. I'm the extremist, apparently, because I want to ban the niqab and I want to speak about Sharia law and I'm deemed as the extremist and he's deemed as the moderate imam. I said, in your ideal society, Kadir, in your ideal society, forget Britain, what you want for your society, what would happen to homosexuals? And he can't not answer. Yeah? So journalists just should ask them the questions in the right way. And he said, well, there'll be punishment. I said, yeah, so what punishment would there be, Kadir? Like, what punishment would there be? It's death. You're part of the Luton in Harmony programme, yet you're the imam and you want death for the homosexual community. Now, from this, in ideal society, we would punish homosexuals. This come out of my interview with him, just from asking him one or two questions, where no journalists, they get these imams on the TV and I think, why are you not asking them questions? So when they ask that, in response to that, because he's the head teacher of a school, yeah, and I've been battling against this group for years, yeah, and just getting shut door in my face. He's sitting, my council are having meetings with him and all his group, and we're on the outside. We're the extremists. They're welcomed in, they're funded, the government are giving them money for their mosque, everything, yeah. So I'm in there. They then do an investigation into his mosque, and then they Ofsted, because it's a school, they raid the mosque. They find books for the children about punishing, killing, whipping women for adultery, cutting off of hands, all these different things in the school. Then we have a Khalid Masood commits a terrorist attack. Westminster Bridge. Guess where he was working? Luton Islamic Centre. Guess where the Stockholm bomber went? Luton Islamic Centre. So now, all the things, and this is the level of infiltration, yeah? When I was running the English Defence League, Luton Mosque challenged bombers' extreme views. These are the headlines that they gave as though they were heroes, yeah? Luton Mosque gets money from the Prevent scheme. The government give every mosque in our country money to report if someone's an extremist. When that man went and blew something up, they had never reported him. But then they play the victim all the time, yeah? But Kadir Bask, they receive money. When all this is blown up and I'm trying to challenge him and we're being called the extremists, there was a group, Luton Borough Council introduced me to a man whose job it was to tackle far-right extremism. So when I met him, I was running the English Defence League. It was in the first couple of years of the English Defence League. He steps forward and he said, right, he told me everything he wants to do. I want to tackle racism. I'm against extremism. I said, I support you in everything you say. Just come and spend 3 days with me. So I bring him to English Defence League meetings and I say, right, this man's job wants to tackle racism, anti-Semitism, extremism, all that. And I said, he's just going to spend a few days listening to what we're doing. He then said to me, there's something different here because far-right groups wouldn't allow this. And I said, mate, this isn't far-right ideology. We're normal people who have had enough, yeah? So his job is to give presentations to councils. Now, after I've exposed Kadir Bask massively as an extremist, radical, jihadist supporter, yeah, because that's who he is, when the Khalid Masood attack comes, the national newspapers are ringing me when they realise. And I've got all of them ringing me saying, what do you know on him? I said, this school, I'm giving them every bit of information because I know everything in my hometown about these groups. I've been following them. I know where they all are. And then there's raids going on at the time and it's all blowing up. I'm feeding them all the information on who he is. Then the police have education and they have people going in and educating them on the far right and on Islam. So this gentleman whose job it is to tackle racism turns up after all of this. He turns up to a seminar. Who's educating the police on Islam? Get
out of here.
I swear to God.
Get out of here.
This is the level they're at. So no one's even, he's a terrorist supporter. Yeah. When they're going in, he's telling the police what phrases to use, what terms.
What other Muslim leaders and influencers have you confronted in UK?
I've confronted all. So in the UK, I was the only.
Have you and Hijab ever done a podcast together?
I'll tell you what Hijab done. Just like 12 months ago, Hijab sent letters to my children's home. So this is how they operate. Yeah. So he sent legal letters. So what I said Muhammad Hijab is a caveman because he is. Yeah. His ideologies belong 1400 years ago with his prophet. Now, what he believes is that it's okay, and he says this, yeah, sexual relationship once a child starts puberty, because that's what Muhammad did. Now, it's hard to have these conversations anyway. No one wants to hear them, yeah? So I made a video saying about his deranged backward views to try and intimidate me, which is what it was, because that's what they do. He sent letters to my children's home. Just to let me know he knows where my kids are. Legal letters, yeah? I responded the next day by posting those legal letters straight through his home. Because, as I said, I do my homework. And what they're used to doing is intimidating and installing fear in people and people shutting up. And the problem is, it's not just them. My biggest fear, I don't fear Mohammed Hijab, a clown like that. It's a joke. I don't feel, even the jihadists. My fear ain't to walk down the street and get stabbed. I've sort of accepted that. I've accepted where I stand in that position. When they started arresting people and catching them with guns and bombs, and I had all these threats of Al-Shabaab named me to be killed. When that happened, I sort of, yes, I struggled to deal with it. As a young man, I probably struggled to deal with it. But once I accepted it, that's not what I fear. I fear the establishment. I fear the government. I fear what they're doing now. That's my worry. I fear what they're doing right now. As I said, I've just come out of custody. Do you know when the riots hit off? And this is where they all work together. I've made multiple documentaries. And their problem is my documentaries absolutely hammer them. I'm not just saying it. I've become very good at what I do with journalism, and they don't like it. And the way we fight back is to show the public. I need the public to understand, and I counter their lies, which is why when they were able to censor us for so many years, and you couldn't even mention us. We were on obscure little websites. We were on Getter. We weren't on the mainstream. When Elon Musk gave me back my voice by having a basic belief in free speech, I was away. I was in Spain. And then I come back to the UK. I organised a demonstration on Armistice Day. October 7th happens. The Palestinian cause. Jihadists have took over our capital city. They're literally standing on the streets of our capital city calling for jihad. They're literally flying Hamas, Hezbollah flags. All of these are crimes. Nothing's being done. We're watching as they're taking over universities, they're taking over capital cities in every Western nation. And probably from the police's point of view, if there's one person that was going to galvanise and mobilise a resistance to that in the streets of the UK, it would be me. I fly back to the UK. They're then talking about Armistice Day, which is a day that we remember our armed forces. We show respects. They were releasing videos and commentary to say that there's going to be no silence. We have a 2-minute silence. There's going to be no silence. I then made a video saying, well, we can't rely on the police to stop them getting to our war memorials. We have no faith in the police preventing them because they literally run away from them. They call for jihad, the police stand there smiling. Not just smiling, when they call for jihad, the Met Police put out a statement saying jihad can mean in a struggle. It's like, they're waving terrorist flags. They're calling for Muslim armies. Yeah? They're not all about an inner struggle, guys. What clowns have you got operating for the Metropolitan Police? Everything is apologetic from the police force. I then made a video saying, we're mobilising now. British men are going to come to our capital city. You're not going to get near that war memorial. Do you know what straight away I received from the Attorney General? My solicitors received a letter from the Attorney General saying that they're contemplating prosecuting me for contempt of court again. This is now the contempt of court that I was just in prison for. Yeah. They then made a video that they then said they're threatened to imprison me again. I organised my demonstration. We went into London and they were happy to hand over our capital city to jihadist groups, whatever's easiest for the police. And they can't go, say they're holding an ISIS flag. If the police went in and tried to stop them, there's a riot and the police know it. So constantly they just allow it. That you saw the Palestinian demonstrations, you saw the hatred, they're calling for gassing the Jews. Literally the most hatred we've seen on our streets of our capital city, and the police are standing there, big smiles on their faces. Yet if it was a British...
How much influence do Jews have in UK?
Jews are a very small community in the UK. Now, there's obviously the conspiracy which comes from the genuine Nazis and far right, that the Jews control everything. I think if they control everything and they control the media, they're not doing a very good job, are they? Because everything's attacking them. And for
because there was a tweet exchange between you and Dan Bilzerian, I believe. Rob, if you want to pull that one up, there was... Do you have it? Do you know which one I'm talking about? Where slavery, money, and then you responded back to him. Let's see which one it is. I'll pull it up here. He said, you will remain a slave as long as you worship money. May 31st. He said this at one of Tate's tweets. You respond back, said, Iran's bitch talking about escaping slavery. Dan's been very critical of Jews, right? Very. And I don't know if Tate, do you and Tate have a relationship together?
So me and Tate before he was Tate, we're from the same town. So yeah, we do. Yeah, we're friends.
Friends till today.
Friends still today.
Till today.
So so what's happened is, this is my view. So if you look at Qatar has spent.
But you know what? I want to preface this. The reason why I'm saying this is, if Jews are as powerful as they are, and they own all these politicians around the world, how is UK in the state that it is, where Muslims are able to do what they're doing, with getting away with it? If Jews have this much power.
Well, they're not. It's an easy way out is to blame the Jews for everything. Yeah. So even Muslims, even when it comes to ISIS or terrorism, they say, "Oh, they're Jewish groups. Everything's Jewish groups. Oh, that's a false flag. That was the Jews. That was a terrorist. Because it's nothing to do with us. That was the Jews as well. Everything's the Jews." Now, with the anti-Jew hatred, I think Mein Kampf, Hitler's book, is 7% Jew hatred. The Quran is 11%. Yeah? Take Israel out of the equation. Muhammad hated the Jews. if Israel wasn't there. Now I get called a Zionist. Yeah, I get called a Zionist all the time. I have this big people attack me all the time, saying I'm funded by. I've never received any funding. I just give my honest opinion. Israel is surrounded by totalitarian Islam.
Did Shulman support you, or
no.
Robert Shulman?
I've never spoke to Robert Shulman in my life.
Story saying that he paid you $6,000 a month, or anything like that.
I worked. So I had this with so say like. Who Daz Zildjian, whatever his name is he making money on YouTube? Because if he is, the owners of YouTube are Zionists, which means he's receiving funding from Zionists. That's what they've done to me. So I work for Ezra Levin. I've never met Robert Shulman.
That's Sky News.
Ezra is a Rebel Media.
Rebel Media, yes.
Ezra's Jewish in Canada.
Right.
I work for him. It was £5,000 a month wage. Yeah. And because Bob Shulman gave donations or funding to Ezra, I've never met him. Never had a conversation with him.
Got it.
So because he gave them money and I took away from them, it's exactly the same as, in fact, any company. If you pick any company and you look somewhere, there'll be some Jewish person involved in it. They'll say, "Oh, you're receiving funding from Jews." That's what they've done.
And now, what are you? What do you believe in? Are you a Christian? Are you a Jew? What would you say? Do you believe in God?
Yeah, I'm a Christian.
You're a Christian.
I'm a Christian. Yeah, I've been pushed more. So I used to say that I didn't believe. My mum was a Catholic, brought up, but then as I've seen the attacks on Christianity, and I've also seen the decay in British society, and the fall of Britain has come from the fall of belief. We have since we've stopped believing, and what built Great Britain? Christianity. What built everything about us, everything about our nation that everyone wants to come to it and make it a success was built on Christianity. Since that's descended, since it's been coming under attack, since people have left it, it's left a void, and that void's being filled. And if we want to understand and remember who we are, as part of our identity, I say to some people, even if you don't believe in Christianity, you don't have to believe in Jesus. That's what built us as a nation. That must be protected. That's part of our identity. But when it comes to the Israel and Jew things, I think Qatar, if you look at Qatar spent nearly £750 million in funding Islamic organisations across Europe. Yeah? Radical jihadist mindset. Qatar are behind it. They've been allowed to buy every port in our country. They own half of London. Our politicians have sold their souls to Qatar. Yeah, and Qatar come in. Now, what Qatar used to do, and these countries used to do, they used to fund little charities, Islamic charities, and they'd fund them to be on the streets calling for dawah. Well, that's gone. What is influential now? Influencers. Okay, Sneeko. I watched Sneeko convert to Islam. Yeah, I don't know why he's converted to Islam. He's gay. So he's converted to Islam.
Sneeko's gay.
Well, I've watched a video from him saying, "Well, I wasn't sure if I was gay or not." Yeah. If you're not sure if you're gay or not, Sneeko, you're gay. Yeah. It's pretty simple. Okay. That's what his words, not mine. So I'm just going by his words. Yeah. But I watched Sneeko, and then he converts to Islam because it's become trendy. Remember, people like us telling the truth about Islam, we were attacked and silenced, and then Islam comes in with all its money, and it becomes very trendy. Yeah. And it becomes trendy because all the money's coming and funding it. Now, Sneeko converts, and then he goes and makes some video in Saudi Arabia, very well-produced video. He's drawing the American youth. You need to wake up in America, yeah? The same with Andrew Tate, okay? These people, in my view, so many of the people, I see these TikTokers now after October 7th, yeah? I saw a black TikToker in America, and she's got the Quran, and I've just decided to pick up the Quran and start reading it. I think, oh, fuck off. How much have you been paid for that, yeah? So to get the influence with the next generation of youth, do you know how many people converted to Islam when Andrew Tate converted to Islam? Do you know how many come out of prison holding the Quran? Do you know all these things? In my view, there's Matt, and especially with Sneeko. If you want to pick up the Quran, pick up my Quran. It explains exactly how it is rather than theirs. But all of these people the way they now reach the public, as in there are billions of pounds to be spent in order to convert people to Islam. In my town centre, there's a shop called Discover Islam. Yeah, it's a shop that's funded. Its sole purpose is to convert non-Muslims to Islam, and that's in every town and city across the UK. There's a mass, and they work with the council. So if America do not wake up to the power and the influence coming in from the money from Saudi Arabia, they're going to convert your youth. And when they convert your youth through the prison system or on the streets, they're going to turn them so quickly and so fast against America and against your own culture and against Christianity and against the Jews. And so the whole Jew hatred thing, it's become fashionable. Do you know what's not fashionable? I get so much criticism. I think I don't get any benefit from it. I'm just speaking the truth. When I grew up in Luton, the Islamic Jihadist Centre is the old synagogue. Okay, I have seen so much Jew hatred in my hometown. I remember there was a young family remembering the Holocaust, and it was on the anniversary of they were having some date, and all the jihadists turned up, and the young family had to lock himself inside the town hall. I don't know any Jewish gangs selling heroin. I don't know any Jewish rape gangs raping their way through our country. I don't know any bad Jews. I know Islamic, out of control, jihadists, criminals, terrorising our nation from one end of it to the other. And somehow they want to blame that on the Jews as well. So Dan is going for his next money shot. If you ask me, Dan Blizzardjan, whatever his name is, like, he's going for the next. He knows it's, if you look at how many likes he gets from being against the Jews, blaming everything on the Jews, and you have a very, in America, it's more mainstream, but it's becoming mainstream in the UK as well. There's so many now. If I was Jewish, I'd be worried, really worried. I'd be really, really worried. So, of what's happening across France. You know what? I done a video.
I saw a video of Sneeko. If I'm not mistaken, if I'm wrong, discard it. We'll leave it. I'm not saying edit it, but I thought I saw a clip that Sneeko was tired of the way of being a Muslim himself. I may be wrong, Rob. If you can look.
Interview, and he was having a go because they're always stressing him how he has to live his life. Yeah, because he doesn't believe any of it. It's all bullshit.
What do you think Tate's reasoning is? Because you've known Tate, for his brother stays being a Christian, but Tate leaves when he goes to jail and he says, the people that wrote me letters were Muslims, but not a single Christian person wrote me a letter when I was Muslim. Have you spoken to him about it or no?
So I believe Christian leadership has failed us, but I believe there's a revival happening right now in Great Britain. I'm going to make a mini documentary on it. Something's happening. Something big is happening. We went to our demonstration, 100,000 people, and there was a lad, and he had Christ is King banner, and the whole place was erupting. And then I looked as 100,000 people were chanting Christ is King in the middle of Trafalgar Square. This is unthinkable, unseen. Something's happening. When you have your loss of identity, loss of culture, and you feel at threat, people are looking back to where it's come from. But the church leadership are traitors to us, in many of them. We need masculine Christianity. I think with Andrew Tate, he's a chess player. And I think that when he was deplatformed, I'd love to have a discussion with Andrew Tate personally on it. We're going to disagree on a lot, me and Andrew Tate. We go back years, but we're going to disagree on a lot. Because I think that when Andrew Tate, he made a comment that he didn't realise the influence he had when he used to make videos. And this is when he got deplatformed. And if he could do it again, he maybe think more careful about what he's saying. Yet there he is telling people and drawing people to Islam. Now, if Andrew Tate now decided he didn't believe in Islam, didn't believe a word of it, he can't even come out and say it. They'll kill him. He can't become the most famous apostate in the world. He'd be dead. They want him more than they want me.
You think they'll kill him?
100%. He'd be the biggest target. If he come out now and said Islam's a load of nonsense.
How come they haven't done anything to you? You were in jail and you were having 80 calls a day, 4 hours on the phone. You're doing all this stuff that you're doing while you're at jail. But there was a guy that was a lifer that was trying to put a hit on you to take you out, and you were there, 7 months. How come that didn't happen? A guy like you, as vocal as you are, how are you still around?
So I spent my entire 7 months on social confinement. I went into Wood Hill prison and left without seeing another prisoner. I was on my own.
7 months you went in, you didn't see a single person?
I was on my own, totally, on my own. I don't want that to see anyone. When they brought me in...
But you know the article that I read that says a lifer was going to take you out.
So the prison used that life, I would be dead with it if I was put into the normal prison population in Wood Hill. Wood Hill was a 40% Muslim population. They beheaded someone. Muslims beheaded someone.
In jail?
In jail. Took his head off. Do you know how they got his head off? They stabbed him up, and then they held him on a yard, and then they used bed sheets to get his head off. That's happening in prison. I don't think anyone understands what's happening. Do you know how the prisons run now in the UK? Say in the prison, Muslims control everything. Yeah. So everyone's converting to Islam. Everyone's converting. All the British criminals, all the blacks, all the whites, everyone just converts because you're safe if you convert because you could become one of the biggest gang. And then they run everything. And if a prison officer steps out of line with Muslims in jail, they put a hit on him. So then the prison officers are scared and fearful. They're getting stabbed. They're getting attacked. You saw recently, so basically, I come into Wood Hill Prison for a civil offence. For a civil offence, you go home. You don't get 18 months in prison, then get transferred to a maximum security jail, and then they use the threat against me to put me on solitary confinement. Do you know what solitary confinement does? I've come out 10 days ago, and the last time I come out 10 days ago. I don't feel great. Yeah, I've gone straight back into what I'm doing, walking around like that, on edge, edgy, feeling weird, feeling everything. And we have a thing in the UK called the Mandela Rule from the United Nations, I think, or EU. The Mandela Rule is you're only allowed to spend 14 days in isolation because of the negative mental health impact that has. Yeah. After 14 days, it has to go to the government. So who was signing off holding me in solitary confinement for 7 months? It was the government. Every 42 days, I had to write my response to the government because I get an opportunity to write. So what I wrote in my response is, you're mentally going to break me, to try to destroy me. And I could see it. After a few weeks, it's probably about 8 weeks it took. After 8 weeks, I felt it. I'm ready to blow like that I was in my prison cell. And over anything, over a phone call. I'm worrying, panicking about my kids, about my family. I'm panicking about everything. And then I'm waiting. Say I'd wait all day. My phone would turn on at 6 o'clock and they just don't turn the phone on. So all these little things that can happen, there was no need for it. So I fill out a form every 42 days, which then is stamped by the government because the prison can't do it. Because of the adverse effect, I sat down with a psychologist in the first 2 weeks. I said, you're the expert. What's 9 months of solitary confinement going to do to me? She said, it's going to be devastating. I said, so why are you doing it? How are you doing it? I played a film. I'm panicked during it. And I'm panicking because the last time I'll come out of solitary confinement,
It probably saved your life, though.
Yeah, but they didn't have to put me in that jail. They put me in a maximum... That jail I was in, everyone's a murderer. Everyone's a terrorist. I'm in the maximum security prison facilities.
What was the place like when you were in jail?
So when they brought me in...
Like the room, how small of a room is it?
So segregation is where they put me. So there's a segregation unit. There's 16 cells here, 16 cells here. So if you stab someone in jail or kill someone or anything like that, you go to segregation, as a punishment. Segregation is not like a normal cell. It's basic. It just has a blue mat. Yeah, you have your blue mat and you have basic facilities because you can't smash anything. So your chair can't be a normal chair because you could break the leg off it because nothing can be breakable. Yeah, so you go to segregation. When they brought me in, they moved everyone out of this side. So they put me in a cell on my own, 16 cells.
They can't see you.
No, there's just me. There's no other prisoners there. Just me, 16 cells. I'd then go out onto an exercise yard.
No, what I'm saying is cells, no bars. This is closed. This is
closed.
Doors. Nobody can see anything you do. They bring the food from the bottom or...
They open your door past your food. So, but then, because I was a civil prisoner, they had to allow me out, which said, walk me from my cell at 8:30 in the morning. I'd walk through 22 doors, 22 locked doors, round the back, and they'd bring me to the jihadist unit. So within the prison system, they built special prisons within the prison to tackle the jihadists. And there's one at Wood Hill because it's a maximum security facility. So they bring me to the jihadist unit and they put me on the yard for 30 minutes on my own. So they'd lock me on the yard. I'd walk around for 30 minutes. Then they'd bring me in and there'd be a small room which would have an exercise bike and a running machine. And they'd put me in there for 2 hours. Now, this unit that was built for the jihadists is the best. Yeah, this is where the terrorists go. Right? So I looked in the cells. It's like a hotel room. They're like a hotel room. They've got everything. Now, these are built for the jihadists. They're not like normal prison cells. They've got the best of everything. So I then argued, because I was eating tinned food, I then argued, why can't I stay on that? If that's empty, because it was empty, why can't I stay on there? And they wouldn't let me stay on there. In the cooking facilities, they have big fridge freezers, cookers. They have all the facilities to cook for themselves. Now, 5 months into that prison sentence, I'm using that facility on my own. So I'm just on my own. I get locked there on my own, spend 2 hours, and they walk me back to my cell. I'll be back in my cell by 11:30. They'd lock the door. The next morning, they'd open the door again, at 8:30. So for 21 hours, I'm sitting on my blue mat. Yeah. So that's what I've gone from doing, sitting on that. But even when I'm out for the 2.5, 3 hours, I'm on my own. So I'm on my own, then I'm on my own. And I'm worried about this. And the reason I'm worried, because when I come out of jail in 2019, I struggled massively. I struggled, man. And I said I went into jail one person, come out another. So I was panicking, thinking, I don't know how hard I'm going to be to adjust when I get out. I'm worried about it. And what's my crime? I haven't even committed a crime. My offence of playing the film is civil. So I'm on solitary confinement. Axel Rudikabana, you know the man who done the stabbing attack in Southport, he's not on solitary confinement. He's got a job in it. He's up on the wing. When I got transferred first to jail, I landed in Belmarsh. I was in this little unit for myself. He was up above. He was up above. So he's not in solitary confinement. He just attacked a prison officer with hot boiling water full of a kettle. But 5 months into my sentence, Salman Abedi was the terrorist who attacked the Ariana Grande concert, blowing up 25 people in Manchester. So his brother, they're all on a unit in Franklin prison, 7 of them. And he stabbed 3 police officers in a terrorist attack 2 months ago. How'd he make a knife? He's out with 7 other prisoners. I'm sitting there thinking, I'm on solitary confinement. I'm currently the only prisoner in the UK system because they're not allowed to. So they have to let you have human interaction with other prisoners. But the government, I was prosecuted not by the police. The government prosecuted me, the Attorney General, which is why people say it's political. It was political. The government prosecuted me. The government signed off every 42 days. So and I probably don't help myself. Every 42 days, I write a response saying, this is what you're doing. This is meant to be your last resort. You shouldn't be doing this. I should be at home. Criminal prisoners are given half time. Then they're allowed home on home detention curfew. They wouldn't allow any of that from me. I had to sit the whole time on solitary confinement. And last week, before I got out, I got my last form to fill out because I'd hit another 42 days. And it goes to Shabina Mahmood, who's the prison justice minister for the Labour government. And in that, I wrote my last final response, which was free in a week. My next documentary, this one I'm going to work on now, Labour's Islamic rape gangs is coming, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. And I sat there, that's what's going then back to Labour government. So that was my response back. So I'm sitting there thinking, they're going to get this letter and they should be worried. Yeah. Because I know what I'm going to show the public. You see, everyone, I know what I showed you with Panorama. Panorama was the film that tried to expose me. I called my documentary Panodrama. That should be mainstream TV around the world. Americans need to watch that.
I've never seen Panorama or heard about it.
No, because you weren't allowed to. Because it was shut down. They put me back in prison. They shut me off every social media in response to it. Watch that documentary. It's the best expose you'll ever watch. I'm not just saying it because it's my work, yeah? Then I've done Rape of Britain 5-part series. Then I've done Hope Not Hate. I showed how Hope Not Hate, NGO organisations will be working in the United States. They will be creating sources of information. They'll be blackmailing people. They'll be funding people. Then the media will use what they say. They will pump it to the global audience to discredit, slander and attack. So that's what I showed. My next documentary, I'm going to show that not just the question you asked me, why? Why did they let it happen? I'm going to show you why they let it happen. I'm going to go through the towns and cities where this happened. I'm going to show you Labour's involvement. The Labour Party, our government, the Democratic Party. As I said, in Rochdale, the councillor went to court and he gave a character reference for the rapist. He didn't lose his job. In Oldham, the man whose job it was to protect kids for Labour, he's in jail as one of the rapists. In Rotherham, the councillor was part of the gangs. In all of these cities, Labour are in bed. And do you know what's happened? Anyone who spoke out has been discredited, attacked, and lost their job. Sarah Champion was a politician in Rotherham. She spoke out against these gangs. She lost her job. They got rid of her. They replaced her with Naz Shah, Muslim politician. Naz Shah is on record as sharing a message that said victims of these grooming gangs need to shut their mouths for the sake of diversity. She was promoted and took the job of Sarah Champion as the women's minister for the Labour government. They have hid this at a level coming from the highest. So you imagine if you had a real independent inquiry in our country, who's got dirty hands? Well, they're all at the top now. The man who was in charge of Rotherham, remember, they come and raided me in the early days and stopped me going to demonstrations. The police officer who was in charge, 2006, 2010, the biggest rape scandal in our country, he's now in charge of counterterrorism. I'm facing a counterterrorism trial on October 13th. I was detained under counterterrorism on the 28th of July last year. I was stopped at the border, leaving the country. Article 7 of the Terrorism Act, they passed these laws, which means you don't have a right to remain silent, and you have to give them your passcode. So if you're detained under terrorism legislation in an airport in the UK or a port, it's the only places they can do it. So they stopped me. Do you know what their words were? We know you're not involved in terrorism, Tommy. We know, yeah? But this gives us power to do this. They interviewed me for 6 hours. I have no right to remain silent. So what they asked me was everything to do with my legitimate work. Who are you working with? Who's helping you? What are you organising? Do you know what they said? The Great Replacement. They said, how are you going to stop the Great Replacement? I thought it was a conspiracy. How are you? So this is, and I've got the interview. So I now face prosecution and prison. So when they get to my phone, they say, give us your password for your phone. I said, not a chance, because I'm a journalist. So my sources of information, everything I'm working on, I've just told you a documentary I'm working on. In that documentary, I will expose Labour politicians who were involved in raping kids. Yeah, they know that. They want to know what I've got, how I've got it. So they come in, I'm a journalist. You don't have a right to know my source of information. They prosecuted me. They arrested me, seized my phone. Now I face prison for not for any crime. They weren't searching for a crime. This is, you talk about freedom. There is no freedom. I'm a journalist. I'm detained under terrorism legislation. No right to remain silent. Have to give them my password. Because I refused to give them my password, I now face prison. And who's in charge of it? The same police officer who was in charge of the Rotherham scandal, who has dirty hands. They've all got, Keir Starmer's got dirty hands. The head of the government have got dirty hands. All of them conspired to hide the rape of a generation of our daughters and slavery, murder, torture. They handed over our children. And I've met the parents. I don't think anyone can quite understand the scale of this rape scandal. This will be viewed as the darkest stain on British history. Is it easier to tackle them or get rid of me? And they've attacked me and slandered me and defamed me. They've used headlines, media, weapons. When the riots kicked off, so October 27th, we hold 100,000 people. Do you know what hurts them? We've now got our own social media. People are watching. We had 1 million people watching live on X. Yeah, we're having a celebration of identity. We don't allow masks to be worn. We know how they infiltrate government. Look, there's an organisation called the Special Demonstration Squad. This was a British government organisation who go into peaceful demonstrations and kick off violence, because then they can discredit you. Then they use the media to pump the images to portray who you are as a movement. We don't allow that. So we now hold our own demonstrations. We don't allow face coverings. We police ourselves. In these events, this would have put the fear of God into the British establishment. 100,000 people chanting Christ is King. That would worry them. Yeah, they've been trying to attack Christianity and end Christianity in our country. And 100,000 people, peacefully, we've reached the public, families. Do you know the diversity of our crowd? Bearing in mind they've been trying to portray us as racist. The amount of minority blacks, Asians, Sikhs, Hindus, church leaders who are now coming to our events. The day after that, I'm detained under terrorism legislation. The day after that. Then I'm prosecuted. Now, the riots kicked off in London. The riots kicked off. 3 young children are butchered. People are angry. I run the English Defence League. This is when we can go down and understand what's happening. It's like the whole Russia hoax. The riots kick off. I'm not in the country when the riots kick off because I've been detained. I'm now on the way to Spain. Riots kick off. I see the news headlines coming out of Southport. They're blaming it on the English Defence League. There is no English Defence League. I left the English Defence League in 2015. It was disbanded. This organisation has not existed for a decade. The government are blaming the English Defence League. The police are blaming the English Defence League. So I knew straight away then, they're landing that on my lap. Why are they landing it on my lap? Because if they wanted to understand why these people are angry, they're angry because of government failures. So they rioted in Southport because as children were murdered, the government tried to hide the reality of who it was. They didn't give the public the information, which allowed rumour mill to spread. I never said anything on who done this. I never made any allegations of who it was. Yeah. As these riots kicked off, they then kicked off in a city called Hull. Now, what they don't want the public to know is that in Hull, a man in the hotel, migrants, we spent £15 billion housing these migrants in hotels. They're coming into the country. The British can't afford to help to feed. They can't afford heating. And yet the hotels are being filled with migrants. One of the migrants left the hotel in Hull and he went out in an act of jihad and he murdered a British pensioner for Palestine. Yeah? He killed someone screaming about Palestine. A terrorist in a hotel. Riots kicked off in Tamworth. If you look in Tamworth, Mohammed left the hotel in Tamworth and raped an English woman. So as these riots spread across the country, they don't want anyone to understand why people are angry in those cities. So instead, they blamed it on an ideology. They blamed it on the far right. Then in steps the Daily Mail. I'm on holiday with my children. I'll show you this headline. I'm on holiday with my children. I've got nothing to do with the riots. I'm calling for peace the whole time. Every video I've done, I'm saying, stop the riots, stop the violence. This is where they combine together. Silence showed the way the security services, the government, the media, they all work together to push their agenda and push their narrative. So in step the Daily Mail. I'm on holiday with my kids. I'm laying on holiday with my kids. This front page story comes out, and this is the Daily Mail, yeah? This is them, the press awards. Tommy Robinson on holiday. Our photograph of Tommy Robinson stoking the flames of the post-Southport race riots from the safety of a Cypriot sunbed became one of the defining images of this summer's disorder. The defining image of this summer's disorder became me on the sunbed. Not the riots, not actual Rudy Gomana. Yeah? The media made me the scapegoat. I had nothing to do with the riots. But they run a headline that said I was instigating the riots. That headline was picked up by the rest of the world's media, and then they pumped it to the entire globe. I've just done a documentary that's gone out now to show what happened. When the journalists done this is the video, yeah? So they run this headline, they tracked me down, they gave the location of where I was, bearing in mind the threats of my family. They shared images of innocent family members in a national newspaper. Then Muslims started making videos telling people to go to the hotel. Muslims made videos with machine guns. Muslims made death threats. My mum and dad had to be relocated. They blamed me for the entire summer disorder. And I had nothing to do with it. And then do you know what I've done? The Daily Mail journalists had done that. I turned the cameras on them. I'm a journalist. I tracked down where they were. I messaged them saying, hey, I'm finding you with my cameras. I'm going to ask you some questions. They've prosecuted me. When I was in jail now, and the police, I got 18 months in prison. We won a case and they said they had to release me. So we find out I'm getting released. The next day, the Metropolitan Police Force come into my cell the next day and said, you're in court on the 5th of June. And they slapped me with more charges. My charges are that I caused fear of violence to these journalists. My messages told them I'm coming to ask them questions. So the protectist globalist media are not allowed to be questioned.
And Daily Mail is a conservative. Some people wouldn't. It's not a.
Conservative.
They're definitely not a leftist. They were supportive of Brexit.
They're controlled media. Doesn't matter if they're conservative.
Let me ask this question. Can you? I was just searching right now. Can Tommy Robinson run for political office?
Tommy Robinson could run for political.
Why don't you?
Why don't I? I believe that I have more power as a journalist. I believe that. See.
I don't know about that. Because if...
At the minute.
Okay. Well, I mean, who is the biggest name in your country that was a journalist that eventually went and, ran and was hated by Chamberlain and all these other guys because he had brass balls and he was feared by a lot of different people? Who is that guy? We know who we're talking about, right? Churchill was a former journalist for many years. But if you're telling me there isn't anybody in the parliament that's going out there being vocal. I'm in Brazil a couple months ago, okay? And do you know who Nicolas Ferreira is in Brazil? Have you heard of this guy?
The guy,
Nicolas Ferreira, the young guy, the 28-year-old superstar.
Yeah.
So this guy right here, Nicolas Ferreira, right? Brazil is another shitty situation. They have a guy named Alexandre de Moraes. He's the dictator. He's the Supreme Court guy that if you see his face, you will know who he is. Yeah. This guy has gone into office, not him, he's a Supreme Court guy. Nicolas got into office through using social media. He has become the most popular voice in all of Brazil, to the point where I'm in Brazil with them, in Brasilia. We're walking around. He can't go anywhere. Everyone is stopping him. He posted a video this year on Instagram. I think it was in January or something like that. Do you know how many likes the video got? Not views, likes. 9.8 million likes. I think the video got 1.5 billion. I'm sorry, 9 million likes, 900,000 comments. Rob, can you see how many views it got? How many views did it get? Just go on the, if you click on the like.
This is why they want to crush social media.
They do, but if you go on the likes, it'll show you the video right there. If you, no, not right there, Rob. Whatever you were going before. If you, Kelly, if you can check to see how many views this thing got on his account. What's the point? Everybody fears him because they see him being able to run for office and be the president of Brazil in 2036. So if you legally can run, according to the law, if you can legally run, and if you don't get into create enemies, people like you now, by the way, someone's going to say, I cannot believe Patrick Bet-David wants a far-right extremist who's a racist Islamophobia to go run for office. No, I mean, if you're seeing the issues that's happening in UK and people are looking the other way because they're scared and you're not getting involved in politics.
My thing is,
or getting behind someone that's willing to do it.
Yeah, I don't think I'd be alive. So the way I operate, the way I live for the last 3 years is I hide. That's the only way I've been able to. I've been in foreign countries. I fly back into the UK, I do my work, and I get the hell out because I'm not safe.
Is your family over there?
They're over there, but there have been many times I've flown them out and moved them. My family have lived in 8 different properties in 8 years. That's what they did. Yeah, every time they had to be moved. Do you know who tracked them down each time? Home Not Hate. the government groups. They expose them. You saw it in Silenced. So I don't believe my family is safe. I know they're not safe. I don't believe I'm safe, but I have important work to do. I believe the fight is in the UK, and I believe that I hoped. You see, with reform, do you know there's not one politician since Churchill, since Sir William Gladstone, there's not one single politician that's mentioned Islam in the House of Parliament. We've had how many jihad attacks? How many terrorist attacks? Not one single person's had a discussion on Islam. No one's even allowed to talk about Islam at a 5-6% Muslim population because of the shutting down and the silencing and the criticism. In America, you've still got people who are willing to talk. I've always looked at America and thought there's still brave people who can have the discussion. And this is this discussion that has to be had. It has to be had unless you're willing to. There's 1,000 years of English history. You're just going to give it away. Christian English history. It's going to be gone. I think Americans, you need to come and look at what London looks like now. You need to come and look at our cities. They're gone. They're never coming back. Paris is not French. It's gone. The beautiful city of romance that you think about, it's not there anymore. And it's not there. It's gone. And we're not even allowed to talk about it. And then when you try and talk about it, far right, racist, extremist, Islam, all this nonsense, that power has gone. The monopoly they had has gone. And it's only gone.
I agree.
Yes,
I agree. I'm with you. That's why I'm saying if your plan is, for example, a guy like you've chosen to live this life. This is not a good life. It's not an appealing life. You can't sell this life to somebody else. You can't say, go live this life. It's tough to stay married if you want to, your 3 kids, you're not seeing them. What father doesn't want to see their kids? What father doesn't want to see their wife? What father doesn't want to, have talking to mom and dad, hey, you guys got to move out of the house because someone's coming knocking on your door. Something can happen to you. This is not a life that one can sell the dream. But if you've chosen to live this life since 2004 and you're a crusader of this message that you're doing, the biggest thing when people say, you're Islamophobic or you're racist or any of that stuff, it's not about that. My interpretation of how I receive you is, look, if you come to my city and I have neighbors, and if I go into a city and it's run by Scientologists and the city gets better, I don't care what your religion is. If you come into a city and you're Jehovah and the economy does better, you create jobs, safer, you guys take care of your kids, I'm good with that. But the whole point is, if you're coming into a city and you bring in ruckus, chaos, crime, and you want us to adjust to you, you came to us. I didn't come to America trying to change America to my leanings. I came to America because America offered me what life I wanted. That's why I'm in America. I'm not in America to say, well, we got to go back and do it the way Iran did it. No, then go back to Iran. If you think that is such the right way and the right way to live, go there. But for a guy like you that's this level of a true believer, I think you may need to either consider that. I'm sure people have already brought it up to you because, and if you consider it's a point of no return, because I asked you multiple times, what do? You said, I'm this guy, I'm this. What's the solution? The one thing a lot of people don't want to talk about, Charlie Kirk tweeted something 3 days ago. And his tweet was, Islam is not compatible with Western ideology or something like that. What does he say? Islam is not compatible with Western civilization. He posted it. 66 million views.
Well, the European Court of Human Rights said in 2007, I think, that Sharia is incompatible with Western civilization.
Now look what your friend Dan says on the bottom.
I completely disagree. Yeah, of course, because he's getting paid by Iran. Of course he's gonna.
See, here's the thing.
He sees his future.
Here's where I'm at. I don't think he's getting paid by Iran, and I don't think
he's just thinking.
No, I don't think he's getting paid by Iran. I don't think you're getting paid by Israel. I think his reasoning is completely different. But to me, at this age, look at the city. I've lived a lot of different places. I don't have one bad experience with somebody that's Jewish. They're always going to make money. They're very tight with their money. You can criticize them for all that stuff on how they are. But when they get into societies and places, it gets better. Yes, they want control. Yes, they want influence. Yes, they want power. Yes, they want all that stuff. Criticize them for that. But when it comes down to this, and we're seeing if it's compatible or not, a message like this, there is a lot of...
Do you know how good that is that Charlie Kirk's done that?
But let me tell you, but we need to fly back, so I got to go take my family to dinner tonight. But when you look at this, you know what this really says, though? This says one thing. It says the Constitution has a challenge and a flaw in it in the U.S. Because what is it? Freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion.
Islam's, that's if you recognize it as a religion. It's an ideology. It's not just a religion.
China said it's a mental illness. You know, I don't know if you saw that or not. There were
You did?
stories about some countries that talk about Islam is a it's not a religion.
The last thing is it's a complete way of life. It's a complete way of life, and it's a danger to the West, a total danger. And that doesn't mean that individual Muslims. I try and separate Muslims from Islam because most Muslims don't follow the scripture to the word. But the scripture to the word is going to bring big problems. I think 4 times as many British Muslims joined ISIS and fought for the British military. 40,000 British Muslims are on a terror watch list. 40,000. These aren't small numbers. If you look at the numbers of Muslims that want Sharia law, look at their views, it's massively problematic. And we're just sitting there waiting for it to get so big and so bad that it's irreversible. And it's only going to take brave people like that speaking up. Brave people speaking up and educating. I think most Muslims are naive of the agenda of Islam. Because many Muslims treat their religion like a buffet. They take the good bits and they.
I agree. I had an assistant of mine that was like right now, a couple of my favorite people in the company. I like to go to dinner, have conversations with them. They're Muslim, but they're nice people, family, good, all that. So my assistant, who was 9 months, was my assistant, one of the funniest guys in the world. He was Muslim, and we sit there and talk about it. Probably the sweetest assistant I ever had. He was the sweetest guy. Some guys you can use the word sweet.
Yeah, love it.
You very, very rarely use the word sweet with a guy. This guy was a sweet guy. Now, he was a surfer. He was a regular guy. He wasn't deep into it to know what's going on. But to me, when you see things like this taking place, Charlie tweets something like that, more and more people are starting to talk about this. And you see a guy like you that just got out 10 days ago, we're sitting having a conversation, a place like UK, I would only encourage you to consider what it would look like if you did get involved. Because the reality of it is history can't be written without UK having influence in a major part of world history. You can't go to study world history without reading a bunch about the influence of what, UK did. Good, bad, ugly, but it's part of history. We all got it, right? So to me, when someone's a true believer like you, from the moment you walked in, you were on the edge. The moment you walked in, it's not like this is an act. 25 years old, you're sitting there with that one journalist, whatever the guy's name is, you're going back and forth. You've been like this and so forth with your niece, your second cousin, 13 years old. But it's great having a conversation with you right now. I'm glad we were able to make this work. We're going to put the link to the book, Enemy of the State, that they can get now on Amazon as well. And all the books, right?
All the books are on trbooks.co.uk. trbooks.co.uk. They're the books. And the new and TR Films, that'll be up by the time this goes out. trfilms.co.uk will be all my documentaries.
trfilms.com?
.co.uk. And the thing is, for anyone watching
put that link below, Rob, in the chat so they have it as well, in the description and comment section.
Whilst everything's so negative, I've also never felt so positive. The public are ready. Our country's ready. I was talking about this 15 years ago. People didn't want to listen. People weren't listening. And I've watched all the other countries have their populace rising. I've watched, it started with Brazil. It started with India and Modi. Then I watched Trump. Then I'm watching all these European nations. I think it's coming. It has to come. And the public are awake now more than ever. But we need, as you said, I always thought if we can change the culture, you change the politics. So we want to build a cultural movement based on identity, because we've lost our identity. It's gone.
This is the worst weapon ever for globalists and establishment. They hate this weapon. This right here exposed all of them. Before this came out 20 years ago, total control. They hate this invention that came out. Hate it.
That's right. Yeah, after Trump got elected, that's why they then took back control. They realized they took back control. So Nick Clegg was put in charge of Facebook. That was our old deputy prime minister. He's just been replaced, right, by Dana White of Facebook. So I'm still deleted from Facebook. I'm still deleted by all these social. I've never done anything. I've never been tried by a court. Totally censored. YouTube turned us back on last week, so we'll see how that goes.
Well, you keep doing what you're doing, because guess what the audience can do? They can sit there, agree with you, disagree with you. But one thing they will definitely do is that documentary out there? The BBC guy Sweeney really get fired? Is that really happen? Let me go look at that video. They're going to be forced to research on their own.
And anyone watches this, if you follow me on my YouTube, it's Tommy Robinson Online. And I'm so great. I'm grateful to Elon Musk for giving us back my voice. I've obviously, because you know how hard it is. You know when you're trying to progress a message,
of course,
and then you're censored.
Of course.
And you're doing the most important work you've ever done on the most important issue you've ever done. My 5-part series on the rape of Britain, and you're not reaching anyone with it.
Do you have any thoughts on the Musk-Trump thing or no?
On the Musk-Trump thing?
Yeah.
I've been flying. I've come here. I'm not sure fully or looked at everything.
Got it.
Do you know what I have? My thoughts are, I know what it's like to feel under pressure. I know it's like to feel under attack. They both must have felt so much pressure and under attack. Everything that's gone on with Tesla, everything that's gone on with the attacks against Elon Musk. I look at both of them and think Donald Trump didn't have to step into the political arena. Donald Trump was a billionaire and he was loved by everyone. And he put himself in the firing line where he will forever be in that firing line. And he's done that for the love of America. And then I look at Elon Musk and he stepped in and done the same. So I have utmost admiration for anyone who steps into that firing line when they simply didn't have to. So I hope for America, everything's sorted out for them. I hope there's an awakening in America. People need to realise the issue of free speech, and I hope one day I get to come and visit America.
Well, when you do, we will send an open invitation to come to the office and do another one live in Florida.
Thanks very much.
Oh, man, this was great. Appreciate you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anytime. Thank you.
Whether you agree with Tommy or not, guess what? You can now get a hold of him on Connect. He will respond back on Connect. You can simply download the app. He's officially on there. Ask him any question. You agree with him. You don't agree with him. An article, something you saw, but now you can get direct contact with Tommy Robinson on Connect.